Chapter 1028 Undermining the Foundation. 3. Before the two Yunshao sect elders could speak, the youth's martial force shot skywards and seemed to disperse the clouds in the sky. These forces belonging to half-step yin-yang perfected lords spilled forth together like a flood and gathered together like a rushing river. The shocking martial force caused everyone to shudder. The two Yunshao sect elders were shocked when they sensed the force of several other half-step yin-yang perfected lords. They had not expected the Yi family to have as many as 4 or 5 half-step yin-yang perfected lords. Just as Elder Yin and Elder Gu were in shock. What's the matter? You think highly of those half-step yin-yang perfected lords but are disdainful of us. Since when has the Yunshao sect become so greedy? The remaining 100+ Yi family disciples immediately spoke up. Brothers and sisters, let us show these two lofty Yunshao sect elders if we are worthy to enter their Yunshao sect to cultivate. One of the slightly older Yi family disciples glanced at everyone and spoke. My thoughts exactly. I resent being looked down on by the Yunshao sect. It is merely the Yunshao sect, but it has become so greedy that it dares to come to our Yi house and make trouble. Let's show them whether we Yi family disciples are worthy of being noticed by the Yunshao sect. As they spoke, over 100 martial forces were simultaneously produced by the 100 Yi family disciples. Like a formless gust of air, it swept the area within a radius of 10 miles. Among the 100 over martial forces, the weakest of them had already entered the realm of martial chi level 3, while the strongest was one step away from transforming into a yin-yang perfected lord. This force seemed to fill the heavens, the earth, the seas, and the mountains. Even every corner of the world seemed to be permeated with it. It was like the raging of ocean waves or like the tremors of a mountain quaking, like the heavens being rent or like the earth collapsing. The integration of 100+ martial forces was terrifying, especially the explosion that followed its coalition, which extended for a radius of 10 miles. At the same time, everyone from the Si family and the 3 branches of the Yi family also sensed it. The master of the Si family did not know what had happened in the Yi house. However, he unhesitatingly led the powerful cultivators in his family straight to the Yi house. The 3 branches of the Yi family and the 3 powerful yin-yang perfected lords led the senior members and talented youths of the branches and also hurried to the Yi family headquarters in unison. At that moment in the Yi family's headquarters, the 2 Yunshao sect elders who, in the midst of these waves of forces, were like lone boats adrift on a raging sea. What's going on? Yi Ling and second elder rapidly sensed this frightening force and appeared at the same time, bewildered. They thought that the talented disciples had been sparring and making mischief and that they had caused trouble. However, when they arrived, things did not seem to be what they had imagined. Greetings, master and elders. When they saw that Yi Ling and a few elders had appeared, the Yi family disciples in the courtyard withdrew their martial force and spoke respectfully. Who are they? The great elder asked when he looked at the 2 Yunshao sect elders and saw that they were strangers. Great elder, these 2 are Yunshao sect elders. Yi Ling laughed. What? Yunshao sect? Chapter 1029 So what if it's Yunshao sect? 1. When they heard that, the expressions of the great elder, second elder, third elder, and even the master, Yi Ling, all changed. As a super sect, the intimidating reputation of the Yunshao sect was deeply rooted in the elders and Yi Ling. When they heard that 2 Yunshao sect elders had come to the Yi house, they were stunned, and that was why their expressions changed. Yunshao sect. Why have they come to the Yi house? Third elder was slightly pale, and cold sweat seeped from his brow. The great elder frowned slightly and thought for a moment before he looked at the third elder and said, Third elder, what do you think of the Yunshao sect? The third elder was taken aback by these words. Great elder, the Yunshao sect is a super sect, and super sects. The third elder had not yet completed his sentence when he suddenly snapped out of his trance. The fear on his face slowly faded, and he also frowned. That's right. So what if it's the Yunshao sect? Master, what do you think of the Yunshao sect? The third elder stared at Yi Ling. What about the Yunshao sect? Yi Ling was lost. Master, elders, the Yunshao sect is nothing. The third elder's expression changed, and he regained his composure. Their Yi family currently held high status. If even the weakest of their talented young disciples went forward, they would compare favorably with the top supernaturally talented disciples in the Yunshao sect. Besides this mainland's peerless school, Beiming Manor, and Phantom Valley, which were supremely powerful, no other super sect's power could compare with that of the Yi family, be it in the Nine Knights dynasty or the formidable Heavens dynasty. That's right, the Yunshao sect is nothing. Second elder nodded rapidly. When he heard that the Yunshao sect elders had arrived, the second elder had reverted to his old ways of thinking that the Yunshao sect was a huge entity. If the Yunshao sect wanted to, they could exterminate a small family clan like theirs on a whim. However, the second elder and the others had forgotten that the Yi family of the present could not be compared to the Yi family of the past. In the past, if the Yunshao sect elders had made a personal appearance, everyone from the Yi family would naturally show profound respect and humility. However, that was the past, not the present. The present Yi family was not the Yi family of the past. Yunshao sect. The great elder frowned slightly. What about the Yunshao sect? Is our Yi house a place where anyone can just go in and out casually? If they wish to enter our Yi house, even the sect master must announce his intentions in advance and wait for our approval, much less the elders. Great elder, you may not be aware that these two Yunshao sect elders are not here to visit the Yi house. One of the Yi family disciples, Yi Leng, suddenly spoke up. When they heard that, the great elder, the third elder, and the others were slightly taken aback. If they were not here on a visit, then why were they here? Great elder, these two Yunshao sect elders are unbearably arrogant. They have come to the Yi house to capture eldest young lady. They have also been talking wildly about exterminating our Yi family. Yi Leng looked at Yi Ling and the elders and added fuel to the fire. What did you say? The second elder was immediately enraged. Every word that I have said is true, isn't that right? Yi Ling immediately looked at Yi Yifan, who had changed his surname to Yi. That's right. Elder brother Yi Leng is speaking the truth. Yi Yifan nodded repeatedly and corroborated Yi Leng's words. Yifan, is what you are saying true? The great elder looked at Yi Yifan. Grandfather, it is all true. The 100+ brothers and sisters present also heard them clearly. Every word is true. Yi Yifan's face was filled with certainty. Chapter 1030. So what if it's Yunshao sect, too? Impudent. The second elder looked at Elder Gu and Elder Yin and roared furiously. You're merely Yunshao sect elders, yet you're so arrogant in my Yi family. With just you two good-for-nothings, how dare you all think of capturing the eldest young lady of my Yi family? Elder Yin and Elder Gu were taken aback. A while ago, they clearly noticed that these senior members of the Yi family appeared fearful after learning of their identities, but that fear was crushed in an instant. Not only were the senior members not fearful, but they were even disrespectful. Elder Gu and Elder Yin gritted their teeth and glared at Yi family members. Never had they thought that there would be a day where they would be humiliated by cultivators at the ordinary martial realm. How dare they proclaim that they, half-step yin-yang perfected lords, are good-for-nothings? Yi Ling's expression changed drastically in an instant. Looking at those two Yunshao sect elders, his eyes twinkled coldly. How audacious of you two! How dare mere two half-step yin-yang perfected lords barge into my Yi family to capture my daughter? Not mentioning two Yunshao sect elders, even if your Yunshao sect master brings all the powerful figures over here, my Yi family will ensure that all of you will not be able to return. 2 days ago, Yi Ling and Yi Qingtang had a long talk, and he learned of the enmity between her and Yunshao sect. Their Yi family had yet to find time to stir troubles for Yunshao sect, but Yunshao sect delivered themselves to the Yi family on their own accord. Humph! A mere Yunshao sect truly doesn't know fear. Since you two are already here at my Yi residence today, just stay then. Don't go anywhere else. The great elder shouted coldly. At this instant, the two Yunshao sect elders were surprised and even in disbelief. Before they headed to Lin Town, they already knew about the rough situation of the Yi family. The Yi family was only a small family clan of the remote Lin Town, and a family clan like the Yi family was unworthy of even clinging on to the threshold of Yunshao sect. Yet, Who could have thought that the Yi family would change so drastically in just half a month? Leaving aside the hundreds of frighteningly talented young disciples in the Yi family, what the Yunshao sect elders could not comprehend was the useless clan master and elders of the Yi family. These people clearly knew that they were Yunshao sect elders, yet still dared to speak so wildly and say such things. No matter how slow the two Yunshao sect elders were, they now realized that something was wrong with the Yi family. However, Elder Yin and Elder Gu did not dare to act rashly. The hundreds of Yi family disciples were pretty skilled, and if they fought them, they were afraid that the two of them would be defeated by these members of the younger generation of the Yi family. Then, Clan Master Si brought a few yin-yang perfected lords of the Si family into the Yi residence. What happened? Clan Master Si noticed that the atmosphere of the Yi family was a little off and asked immediately. Powerful oppressive forces were emitted from the Yi residence previously, and Clan Master Si thought that something happened. It turned out that it was indeed so after entering the Yi residence. The third elder recounted the situation to the Si family members immediately. After listening to what the third elder said, Clan Master Si sized up Elder Yin and Elder Gu and scoffed. Although Yunshao sect was a super sect and a mighty force in the formidable Heavens dynasty, it could not even be compared to the Si family currently and yet was still so arrogant. They were just two elders, and they dared to come to the Yi family to arrest Tang Tang. Chapter 1031. So what if it's Yunshao sect? 3. Who exactly gave them this courage? What laughing stock? At this instant, the yin-yang perfected Lord branch masters of the other three branches rushed over to the headquarters along with their respective senior members and talented disciples. In no time, the Yi family field was filled with people, and all of them were powerful figures. Yunshao sect is truly a good example for the super sections. If the Nine Knights dynasty and formidable Heavens dynasty were as bold as the Yunshao sect, it would really be worthwhile. A branch master scorned as he stared at Elder Yin and Elder Gu. The two Yunshao sect elders had the skills of a half-step yin-yang perfected lord and came to the current Yi residence just by themselves, wanting to catch the Yi family's eldest young lady who was a yang lord. Was the entire Yunshao sect a group of idiots? At this moment, Elder Yin and Elder Gu were struck with astonishment. Regardless of the Yi family or Si family, numerous yin-yang perfected lords actually appeared in both families. The two Yunshao sect elders even knew the names of some of the yin-yang perfected lords. These people were not even supposed to appear in Lin Town, yet for some reason, they were all gathered in this remote town. How can this be? Yin-yang perfected lord. Feeling the powerful skills of several yin-yang perfected lords, Elder Gu trembled slightly. Their Yunshao sect merely had two yin-yang perfected lords. One of them was the Grand Elder, who did not participate in the affairs of the external world, while the other was the sect master. Yet right before their eyes, there were actually numerous yin-yang perfected lords in the Yi family. In terms of the number of yin-yang perfected lords, the Yi family actually had much more than Yunshao sect. Do Yunshao sect and eldest young lady have enmity? Suddenly, Elder Bai Kuei and Elder Zijin walked over slowly with 10 youths behind them. Elder Bai Kuei and Elder Zijin were administering an assessment for the new young talents previously. About 200 people participated, but only these 10 people truly passed the assessment. Moreover, Elder Bai Kuei realized that the massacre bloodline energy was activated in the body of one of the youths, and it was extremely impressive. Once the assessment ended, Elder Bai Kuei and Elder Zijin wanted to bring these newly recruited disciples to Yi Qingtang and introduce that youth with the massacre bloodline to Yi Qingtang. Yet, they just returned to the Yi residence and was faced with this situation. Yunshao sect? The 10 youths behind Elder Bai Kuei and Elder Zijin had strange expressions. That Yunshao sect actually came to cause trouble to the Yi family. Were they tired of living? Half-step yin-yang perfected lords came to the Yi family to stir trouble and wanted to capture a yang lord. They were truly exposing themselves to ridicule when such a matter was made known to others. Bai Kuei, formidable Heavens dynasty. Grand Imperial Sire. Elder Gu was extremely startled after seeing Bai Kuei. Taoist Zijin. Elder Yin's expression changed greatly when his eyes landed on Taoist Zijin. Regardless of Bai Kuei or Taoist Zijin, both were renowned powerful figures of this mainland. Especially Bai Kuei, not only was he the grand imperial sire of formidable Heaven's dynasty, his martial skills were almost the best, for he possessed a cultivation base of yin-yang perfected Lord Third Heaven. Chapter 1032 So what if it's Yunshao sect? 4. The two Yunshao sect elders were dumbfounded as they looked at Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin in disbelief. Why did the two renowned powerful figures of this mainland suddenly appear in the Yi family? Even until then, Elder Gu and Elder Yin were still unaware of what exactly had happened in the Yi family, and everything that happened was already beyond their comprehension. How do you intend to settle these two people? Taoist Zijin looked at Bai Kuei and asked. Upon hearing that, Bai Kuei waved a hand. You should ask eldest young lady. The two yin-yang perfected lords of Yunshao sect came to the Yi residence to capture eldest young lady and offended the Yi family. I think there's no need to ask eldest young lady about these kinds of matters. Let's just put them to death, Taoist Zijin said. As they heard that Taoist Zijin wanted to execute the two of them, Elder Gus and Elder Yin's expression changed drastically. Even until then, Elder Gu and Elder Yin still did not know what happened exactly and why the situation developed to this stage. What do you think, Clan Master? Elder Zijin looked at Yi Ling and asked. Yi Ling pondered for a moment and subsequently said, These two Yunshao sect elders are audacious. Let's execute them as Elder Zijin had suggested. If it was in the past, Yi Ling would not even have dared to think about this. However, the current Yi family was worlds apart from before, and a mere Yunshao sect was nothing to them. Both Elder Yin and Elder Gu were completely dumbfounded. They simply could not understand the drastic change in the Yi family that seemed to happen in a night. Not only did the Yi family have plenty of insanely talented young disciples, but formidable Heaven's dynasty's grand imperial sire, Bai Kuei, and Taoist Zijin even became elders as well. With just the skills of Elder Bai Kuei and Elder Yin, it was enough to contend against Yunshao sect. It was also to say that the current Yi family was simply no weaker than Yunshao sect. Apart from the foundation of the two parties, the quality of the Yi family disciples surpassed that of Yunshao sect by leaps and bounds, and the cultivation skills of Yunshao sect master might lose out to Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin as well. When Taoist Zijin waved his right arm, Elder Gai and Elder Yin turned into dust before everyone's eyes. As the great elder and second elder watched the two Yunshao sect elders disappear, their expressions changed. Even though the current Yi family was extremely powerful, the inherent mindset of the past still made them feel as though they were in a dream. Looking at the Yi family disciples, they were extremely calm as though everything was deserved and right. After the two Yunshao sect elders died, Yi Qingtang finally appeared and came to the field. She did not even have the thought of showing herself to two mere Yunshao sect elders. Eldest young lady. Elder Bai Kuei greeted respectfully when he noticed Yi Qingtang. Greetings, eldest young lady. The branch masters and yin-yang perfected lord of the Ci family bowed hurriedly. The young talents present all looked towards Yi Qingtang in admiration. This is the young lord? The batch of disciples that Elder Bai Kuei brought over looked at Yi Qingtang with eyes filled with surprise and disbelief. The lady before them was not much older than them and simply seemed like the same age, yet she was already a young lord of a yin-yang perfected Lord Seventh Heaven. Chapter 1033 Return to the Sect, 1. Naturally, no one dared to voice their doubts. From today onward, the Yi family will wage war against Yunshao sect. I want Yunshao sect to cease to exist. Yi Qingtang declared. Yi Ling and the second elder were startled. Yi Qingtang actually planned to annihilate Yunshao sect. However, given the combat powers of a young lord, it was an easy feat to annihilate Yunshao sect. Although a sect like Yunshao sect had extremely powerful foundations, given Yi Qingtang's young lord combat power, it was not impossible to completely destroy Yunshao sect. Currently, the Yi family was already strong enough, and Xianling sect came to mind. To completely wipe out Xianling sect, which had a strong foundation, time was required. The pressing matter at the moment was to head to Xianling sect and rescue it from Yunshao sect. Furthermore, it was time to settle the scores with Yunshao sect. After the trip to the Dragon Vein, Yi Qingtang's martial realm entered the Yang Lord of the Yin Yang Perfected Lord, and she could easily rescue Xianling sect without using the power of her bloodline. However, it was not simple to annihilate Yunxiao sect. Although Yunxiao sect did not have any Yang Lords, a sect's foundation was extremely powerful. For example, in the battle between Xianling sect and Yunxiao sect's skills surpassed that of Xianling sect massively, but Xianling sect could still inflict huge damage by relying on its heritage and foundation. Even an ordinary sect like Xianling sect had such frightening foundation, much less Yunxiao sect, a super sect. Eldest young lady, with those Yunxiao sect senior members, there is nothing to be afraid of. It's just that we are unclear of Yunxiao sect's foundation and heritage. Taoist Zijin looked at Yi Qingtang and said. Yi Qingtang was fully aware of this point without Taoist Zijin's reminder as well. Given the Yin Yang Perfected Lord Third Heaven cultivation base of Taoist Zijin and Bai Kuei, they could defeat Yunxiao sect's Grand Elder and Sect Master. However, once Yunxiao sect used their foundation and went all out, the outcome would be uncertain. To completely destroy Yunxiao sect, it was probably insufficient with just Bai Kuei, Taoist Zijin, and the new Yin Yang Perfected Lords who joined the Yi family. Eldest young lady, I'm afraid you will also need to be present to annihilate Yunxiao sect. Elder Bai Kuei looked at Yi Qingtang and said. Yi Qingtang nodded slightly. After discussing the details with Elder Bai Kuei and the rest, Yi Qingtang departed from Lin Town and flew towards Xianling sect. Currently, the little white tigers seemed to be growing. Thus, it was still in a deep sleep. As such, Yi Qingtang left it at the Yi family and did not bring it along with her. Given Yi Qingtang's current speed, she had already arrived at the periphery of Xianling sect in less than half a day. The sect, which was originally floating in the sky, however, landed on the ground, and the entire sect was enveloped by a faint golden screen. This screen was initially set up by the Blood Moon Holy Lord and could sustain for only half a year. Presently, this screen was no longer as strong as initially, and its light was increasingly dimming. Several Yunxiao sect disciples guarded the surroundings of Xianling sect. Once the screen broke, they would notify the senior members of the sect immediately and wipe out Xianling sect without sparing anyone. Quickly look. That lady. Chapter 1034 Return to the Sect. 2. One of the Yunxiao sect disciples was a little surprised to see Yi Qingtang walking towards Xianling sect slowly. Why is that lady so familiar looking? Before long, another Yunxiao sect disciple exclaimed in shock. Yi Qingtang. Although these Yunxiao sect disciples had never seen Yi Qingtang face to face, they had seen her portrait before. That Yi Qingtang appeared in the Hell of Avisnaraka mystic realm previously and even obtained a fiend celestial beast. Quick, inform the higher-ups. A Yunxiao sect disciple's eyes were burning with desire. Although Yi Qingtang is only an ordinary disciple of Xianling sect, she was enraged our Yunxiao sect and was listed on the assassination roll. Hee, I never thought that my luck would be so good. A male in white stared at Yi Qingtang, and his lips curled into an icy snicker. Yi Qingtang's skull is indeed valuable. However, it said that Yi Qingtang obtained the fiend celestial beast in the Hell of Avisnaraka mystic realm. If we kill her and end up not being able to find the fiend celestial beast, wouldn't the sect not forgive us? Another man spoke up. Humph, what about that? Let's just break Yi Qingtang's limbs and keep her alive on her last breath. Wait. A fiend celestial beast is very scary, and Yi Qingtang obtained it. No matter how weak Yi Qingtang's martial skills are, she still possesses the fiend celestial beast. Would we be able to block the attack of the fiend celestial beast? Hee, what are you afraid of? That fiend celestial beast is merely an infant. That's right. How lethal can it be if it could be taken by a Xianling sect disciple? There's nothing to be fearful of. Then, the few of them immediately rushed towards Yi Qingtang without hesitation. Stop! The youth in the lead stared at Yi Qingtang and shouted coldly. Upon hearing that, Yi Qingtang stopped in her tracks slightly and looked at the men before her. You are Yi Qingtang. The man in the lead sneered. That's right. There were no emotions on Yi Qingtang's face. You're a lady, But I never thought that you would be so bold. The Yunshao sect disciples snickered when the lady before them admitted her identity so simply. Back when Yi Qingtang was in Xianling sect, she was merely an ordinary inner sect disciple, but she formed a deep hatred with Yunshao sect and was listed on the assassination roll. After such a long time, Yi Qingtang reappeared outside Xianling sect, and this was a great thing for the Yunshao sect disciples. Yi Qingtang, if you are sensible, hand over that infant fiend celestial beast, and we can consider sparing your life. What do you think? One of the Yunshao sect disciples looked at Yi Qingtang and sneered. However, before this Yunshao sect disciple could continue speaking, Yi Qingtang raised her right arm a little, and the disciple died instantly without anyone seeing how Yi Qingtang did it. The remaining Yunshao sect disciples were left dumbstruck and in disbelief. To these Yunshao sect disciples, Yi Qingtang's attack was too quick, and they simply did not see how Yi Qingtang attacked. Without giving the people a chance to speak, Yi Qingtang slaughtered all the Yunshao sect disciples in the surroundings in just the blink of an eye. These disciples were already at the peak of martial qi level 2/3 heaven, and it was considered pretty good. Yet, before Yi Qingtang, they were as frail as pieces of paper. Chapter 1035 Return to the Sect. 3. After killing all the ignorant Yunshao sect disciples, Yi Qingtang's eyes slowly landed on the defense barrier around Xianling sect. This barrier was implemented by her cheap little brother, the Blood Moon Holy Lord, whom she was extremely grateful for. Had he not appeared in the end back then, even Yi Qingtang would be uncertain of how the situation would have progressed. What she could be certain of, though, was that Xianling sect definitely would not have persisted until today. In Xianling sect, there were Yi Qingtang's good friends such as Qin Huan and Yun Shu, her master, Elder Mo, as well as Elder Qin, who treated her rather well. However, it was a pity that the Grand Elder was no longer here today. Yi Qingtang did not have any hatred toward the Grand Elder. From a certain aspect, the Grand Elder was even more authentic and human. In Xianling sect, Qin Huan, Yun Shu, and others were gathered in a corner. It had been several months since they had been trapped in Xianling sect. The blood-colored screen above Xianling sect gradually dimmed and was staunchly different from its initial state. Moreover, the masses trapped in Xianling sect were almost running out of supplies. The Xianling sect disciples and senior executives had been taking their food and drinks from within Xianling sect, and all of the stockpiles were stored previously. However, these supplies were almost depleted after nearly half a year, and there were barely any water sources remaining. Currently, the disciples in Xianling sect did not even have water to clean themselves with, much less have food to fill their stomachs. About a month ago, a few Xianling sect disciples took the risk and left the barrier formation, wanting to avoid the Yunshao sect disciples and search for water. However, they were discovered eventually and died in the hands of the Yunshao sect disciples. As sect disciples, they could bear with not having water to wash up. However, not consuming food over a long time was not what they could withstand given their martial cultivation realm. Compared to the Xianling sect disciples, the elders and senior executives were naturally much more powerful in terms of martial cultivation, and thus, their need for food was much smaller. Although the elders and senior executives had already taken out their own food and distributed to the disciples, it was still unable to solve this critical situation. Many Xianling sect disciples were nearing the borders of insanity due to the lack of water and food. Yet despite so, no one dared to leave the defense barrier ever since those Xianling sect disciples who left it were tragically killed by the Yunshao sect people. Qin Huan looked at the pale Yun Shu beside him and sighed. I wonder how junior sister Yi is doing. At the mention of Yi Qingtang, Yun Shu and Lin Long opened their eyes instantly. The few of them missed Yi Qingtang dearly, but they were trapped within Xianling sect for almost half a year and simply could not get any information from the outside world. Junior sister Yi will definitely be fine, Lin Long said. Qin Huan shook his head. That may not be so. I heard that junior sister Yi was listed onto the assassination roll by Yunshao sect. It said that the rewards surpassed the total rewards for killing the first and third person on the list. Qin Huan, can't you wish some good for junior sister Yi? Gu Yanqiu rolled his eyes at Qin Huan and said helplessly. Nonsense. Of course, I wish for junior sister Yi to be safe and sound, but what I said is the truth. Junior sister Yi treated Yunshao sect that way previously and caused Yunshao sect to lose face. In addition to such tempting rewards, I'm afraid junior sister Yi is having a hard time. Chapter 1036. Pray. The few of them were extremely worried about Yi Qingtang as well. The war between Xianling sect and Yunshao sect was extremely horrific. Although the Blood Moon sect appeared afterward, the ultimate elders suddenly showed up too, thus causing Xianling sect to be in this state. However, if Yi Qingtang did not appear as the Blood Moon Holy Lady, Xianling sect would probably have been annihilated by Yunshao sect already. Don't worry. Junior sister Yi is a dignified Blood Moon Holy Lady. Blood Moon sect is such a strong force. How can anything happen to junior sister Yi? Yunshu said. Although the Blood Moon sect is powerful, it is the enemy of this entire mainland. It is an evil cult. Qin Huan said hurriedly. Upon hearing that, some miserable-looking Xianling sect disciples fixed their eyes on Qin Huan successively. If there was no Yi Qingtang or evil cult as mentioned by Qin Huan, they would have already become corpses a long time ago and not talking as they were right now. Without the Blood Moon sect, we would have been dead already, Lin Long said. Qin Huan nodded without retort. His eyes landed on a tomb forest not far away as an inexplicable sorrow emerged on his face. In this half-year, the disciples who once fought for Xianling sect sustained heavy injuries and were unable to be treated by the outside world, eventually passing on. In the past, these brothers and sisters were not afraid of strong enemies, but in the end, they were unable to persist and could no longer see the rays of hope. Other than the Xianling sect disciples, there were several wardens and senior executives who were severely injured as well. In addition to this was the poor environment conditions which resulted in damage to their martial foundation, causing their martial skills to dip extensively. Unable to resolve this mental distress, they eventually fell into depression and died. At this instant, Elder Mo and Elder Qin arrived in the vicinity of the martial arts hall. Looking at the Xianling sect disciples who were lying on the ground and seated everywhere, they could not help but sigh. The sight of this dilapidated Xianling sect led them to recall the prosperity of the past. Greetings, sect master, and two elders. Seeing that the sect master and the elders arrived at the martial arts hall, the Xianling sect disciples hurriedly stood up and bowed at them. Noticing the situation, the Xianling sect master hurriedly waved his hands. There's no need to bow. Quickly rest. Don't waste your energy. Looking at the scrawny and listless Xianling sect disciples and then recalling memories of them in the past, the sect master was in anguish. It was as though there were billions of needles poking at his heart. A long while later, Elder Qin and Elder Mo followed the Xianling sect master to a tomb forest ahead. There were hundreds of tombs in the forest. The bodies of a portion of them no longer existed since the war, thus, the sect could only build a tomb containing the personal effects of the deceased to mourn those valiant Xianling sect disciples who died in the battle. At the same time, Qin Huan, Yunshu, and many other disciples followed the sect master to the tomb forest. Brothers, we are here to visit you. Many Xianling sect disciples immediately kneeled and bowed before the tombs. Looking at these nameless tombs, it was as though they returned to the night before the Great War. Everyone drank and chatted together and learned from each other before the bonfire. It was as if those voices and faces never left. The battle cry seemed to ring in their ears again at this very moment. We use our blood to soak Zuanling's flag. We use our hearts to light Zuanling's anger. We use our hands to hit Zuanling's drums. Chapter 1037. Sect Protector Divine Beast. The battle cries still seemed to echo in their ears. Those long-gone faces and familiar bodies were imprinted in the minds of the masses eternally and would never be erased. Sometime later, the Xianling sect master slowly kneeled beside the countless graves. Noticing the situation, Elder Mo, Elder Qin, and the Xianling sect disciples fell on their knees successively and bowed to those heroes who protected the sect with their lives. Junior brother Zhou. A shout erupted suddenly. Everyone quickly turned around and looked behind. A young man who was all stick and bones completely fainted when he bowed. Noticing the situation, Elder Qin rushed forward hurriedly and held up that young man who was void of color. After inspecting for a moment, he sighed softly. This young Xianling sect disciple was yet another victim of the lack of food supplied. He had not consumed anything for too long, and his martial realm was insufficient from the start, which caused him to faint from hunger. The current Xianling sect was already depleted of all supplies, and the river was all dried up. There no longer was any consumables in the sect. A cultivator and ordinary human was different in that a cultivator's need for food would gradually decrease as their martial realm improved. However, these sect disciples had not reached that stage yet. Moreover, the body would not be replenished if it did not consume anything for a long time, and this would also pose as a life danger over the long run. I remember, the sect still has a few spirit animals. A long time later, Xianling sect master looked at Elder Qin and said. Elder Qin and Elder Mo nodded instinctively. There were indeed a few old spirit animals remaining in the sect. They had rendered their highest service in battles for the sect and were fed and taken care of for the rest of their lifetimes by the sect after they aged. Don't worry, sect master. The spirit animals can barely absorb the spirit energy in the surroundings and don't need to consume anything at the moment, said Elder Mo as he thought the sect master was afraid that the spirit animals would die from hunger. However, resolution filled the sect master's eyes as he said, "Kill them." What? The two elders and everyone else at the scene were taken aback by what the Xianling sect master had said. Distribute the flesh and blood of the spirit animals to our sect disciples. As long as they can hold out an additional day. Xianling sect master seemed to age by dozens of years in an instant. But, sect master, for the sect, those spirit animals once, Elder Qin's body trembled slightly. One of the spirit animals had been in Xianling sect for a longer time than he did and was even older than him. Elder Qin, I understand what you wish to say. Xianling sect master nodded. At this moment, the middle-aged man seemed like an elderly who was about to pass on, and his voice quivered. But, these kids are all about to die from hunger. Is there any other solution? Xianling sect master uttered. Indeed, if there was still no food, how much longer could these sect disciples withhold? Was it 1 day or 1 month? Even if he were to become a sinner of Xianling sect, the Xianling sect master could not bear for these disciples to end up dying from hunger or thirst. As a cultivator, they could die from battles. But how could they die from hunger? At this moment, the disciples were dead silent as well. They did not know what to say, and even if they wanted to, they were almost out of energy. However, before Xianling sect master could continue to say something, a terrifying roar sounded from outside the sect. An enormous creature hovered above Xianling sect completely. Above that enormous creatures were a number of Yunshao sect elders and senior executives. Yunshao sect? Sect Protector Divine Beast. Chapter 1038. It's you, one. Everyone was startled and even in disbelief when they saw the giant creature outside Xianling sect. After the Yunshao sect Protector Divine Beast was injured by the Blood Moon Holy Lord, it was sent back to Yunshao sect to recuperate. Unexpectedly, it was actually this powerful now. The past Yunshao sect Protector Divine Beast and the current one were simply worlds apart. Once spirit animals like these advanced in level, their skills would increase massively. The Yunshao sect Protector Divine Beast actually advanced in level. Surprise etched across Elder Mo's face as he looked at the giant creature shrouding over the entire sect. Back then, the Yunshao sect Protector Divine Beast was only an equivalent of a human half-step yin-yang perfected lord, but after the advancement, its combat power paralleled that of a human yin-yang perfected lord's second heaven. Boom! Deafening rumbles followed with every movement the sect Protector Divine Beast took. The already dim red screen above Xianling sect became even fainter and was completely broken after a few hits. The energy of that defense barrier was already mostly exhausted from the start. Now that the advanced Yunshao sect Protector Beast arrived and attacked the defense barrier with the combat power of a yin-yang perfected lord, it was reasonable that the barrier broke. Previously, after Yunshao sect learned that Yi Qingtang appeared nearby Xianling sect, the sect elders immediately rushed over with the sect Protector Divine Beast, which just advanced not long ago. However, after arriving at Xianling sect, they realized that the Yunshao sect disciples guarding in the area were all dead, and Yi Qingtang was nowhere to be found. Enraged, the Yunshao sect elders decided to destroy Xianling sect completely first and believed that Yi Qingtang would not be able to continue hiding. However, just as the defense barrier was broken, a shadow suddenly appeared in the sky at lightning speed. In just a few breaths' time, it had already reached the Yunshao sect protector divine beast and blocked it. The Xianling sect members were surprised, especially Elder Mo, who thought that the figure was very familiar after close inspection. That is, Junior Sister Yi? Yun Shu looked at the lady in the air who blocked the Yunshao sect protector beast, and his expression changed immediately. Hearing Yun Shu, everyone took a closer look at the lady and was startled. It was indeed as Yun Shu had said. Who else could that lady be if it was not Yi Qingtang? Qing! Very quickly, Elder Mo stared at the lady in the sky and uttered in surprise. Wasn't that lady his disciple, Yi Qing? The Xianling sect members were all dumbfounded for a moment. Why did Yi Qingtang suddenly appear here? Roar! The Yunshao sect protector divine beast glared at the miniature ant-like human who stood in its way and roared in fury. Yi Qingtang! The Yunshao sect elders on the back of the sect protector divine beast stared at Yi Qingtang, and a trace of elation emerged in their eyes. It seems that the information was true. Yi Qingtang had indeed returned to Xianling sect. Everyone was already aware that Yi Qingtang obtained a fiend celestial beast in the hell of Avicenaraka mystic realm, and her appearance meant that the infant fiend celestial beast was also in the vicinity. If their Yunshao sect could obtain that fiend celestial beast and offer it to the Baiming Manor, wouldn't their Yunshao sect? Chapter 1039. It's you, too, Yi Qing. It's indeed you. A Yunshao sect elder looked at Yi Qingtang and scoffed. Yi Qingtang did not react to him and merely unsheathed a sword from her waist. Ha! Seeing that Yi Qingtang drew a sword out, the few Yunshao sect elders on the back of the sect protector divine beast immediately burst out in laughter. Could it be that this Yi Qingtang still wanted to put up a last fight with them? Sush. Nonetheless, before the Yunshao sect elders finished laughing, the smiles were completely frozen on their faces as disbelief and horror filled their eyes. As Yi Qingtang waved her sword, the frightening aura of a young lord surged into the sky, and the sword aura completely enveloped the Yunshao sect protector divine beast. Sensing this unbelievable aura, even the Yunshao sect protector divine beast trembled. Boom boom! A loud roar erupted in the next second. Before the shocked Xianling sect masses, the enormous body of the sect protector divine beast instantly erupted into mists of blood, and the several Yunshao sect elders died along with it at the scene. After slaughtering the Yunshao sect protector divine beast and Yunshao sect elders with one slash, Yi Qingtang immediately turned around and landed in Xianling sect. At this instant, Xianling sect was enshrouded in the supreme energy of a young lord, and those disciples with weak pulses and even those who fainted from hunger were immediately energized. Junior Sister Yi? Qin Huan and the rest were stunned when they saw Yi Qingtang descending from the sky. Was this lady who was brimming with a young lord energy really Yi Qingtang? It had been less than half a year since they were separated from Yi Qingtang, and she had already become one of the few powerful young lords of this mainland in this period of time? Qingtang. Similarly, Elder Mo found this hard to swallow. No matter what, Elder Mo could not believe that Yi Qingtang had actually grown this much in less than half a year. Master, it's been long. Late. Yi Qingtang looked at Elder Mo and bowed with cupped fists. Back then in Xianling sect, she took Elder Mo as her master, and he treated her pretty well. Naturally, Yi Qingtang would not forget him. A whole 10 minutes later, Elder Mo finally returned to his senses and nodded rather absent-mindedly. Are you really Yi Qingtang? Elder Qin was clearly shaken as he looked at the lady before him. A young lord was someone whose martial cultivation base was at least at Yin Yang perfected Lord 7th Heaven, an absolutely unrivaled figure on this mainland. Not mentioning a young lord, it would also be unbelievable for Elder Qin even if Yi Qingtang showed up as Yin Lord. It's me. Yi Qingtang nodded in agreement. Shit. Qin Huan walked to Yi Qingtang's side and inspected Yi Qingtang closely. How can this be? Junior sister, you're actually... Could it be that I'm hallucinating because I'm too hungry? Yi Qingtang was speechless. However, it was not strange for Qin Huan to say such things given his personality. Senior brother Qin, it really is me, affirmed Yi Qingtang. But, young lord, this is... Qin Huan and the rest found it hard to believe at the moment. However, Yi Qingtang did not wish to discuss this matter too much as it was not something that could be explained clearly in a few sentences after all. Seeing that Yi Qingtang was unwilling to talk about it, everyone understood what to do and no longer mentioned it. Yi Qingtang immediately retrieved plenty of food and water from her space ring and told Qin Huan and the rest to distribute them. Chapter 1040 It's You, 3. There were not many Xianling sect disciples remaining currently. Although the water and food Yi Qingtang brought from the Yi family was not considered a lot, it was still sufficient to solve the crisis. Long before she headed to Xianling sect, she had already realized this issue. Thus, she prepared some supplies in a separate space ring. After all, the past Yi Qingtang was also a Xianling sect disciple, and she had some understanding of Xianling sect. It had been almost half a year since Xianling sect was trapped by Yunshao sect, and the stored supplies in the sect were probably already depleted. Elder Mo had complicated feelings as he looked at Yi Qingtang. He would never have thought that his disciple actually became a supreme young lord of this mainland in less than 6 months. Even if he told others this, probably no one would believe that he was the master of a young lord. Xianling sect master was extremely startled to see Yi Qingtang. Even a strong force like Yunshao sect was as weak as an ant before a young lord. Yi Qingtang sighed softly as she looked at the current dilapidated Xianling sect. Apart from food and water, she also took out numerous elixirs from her space ring to distribute out to everyone. These elixirs could temper the body and be extremely beneficial even to an ordinary yin-yang perfected lord. If cultivators at the martial qi stage consumed it, the effects would be multiplied. After consuming the supplies that Yi Qingtang brought, their complexion was way better than before, and after consuming her elixirs, they were full of vigor in at most an hour. It's truly a magic pill? My body did not have any energy before, but now, even if a fierce tiger came, I feel that I can kill it with one punch, Qin Huan commented excitedly. Master, sect master, let the disciples recuperate first, then, rebuild Xianling sect later on, Yi Qingtang said after a long time. Xianling sect master nodded. This was what he hoped for the most. Even in his dreams he wished to rebuild Xianling sect. Qingtang, can you prevent Yunshao sect from attacking Xianling sect during Xianling sect's reconstruction? Xianling sect master looked at Yi Qingtang and asked in an almost pleading tone. Yi Qingtang was currently a young lord, and as long as she was willing, Xianling sect could be rebuilt easily, and only Yi Qingtang was able to stop Yunshao sect. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Cite only, what are you saying, sect master? A Xianling sect disciple for a day is a Xianling sect disciple for life, Yi Qingtang said. The Xianling sect master was a little agitated after hearing Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang immediately took out some items which she obtained from the mystic realm and handed them all to the sect master. Apart from the numerous weapons and elixirs, there were also talismans that could help with the reconstruction of Xianling sect. Master, sect master, don't worry about Yunshao sect. Now that I'm back, I will definitely destroy and obliterate all traces of Yunshao sect. Yi Qingtang looked at Elder Mo and Xianling sect master and said, All right, Elder Mo nodded. His disciple was now a young lord, and annihilating Yunshao sect could be easily done. Qingtang, Xianling sect is fortunate to have you. Xianling sect master looked at Yi Qingtang and said, Chapter 1041 Who is afraid of who? 1. If not for Yi Qingtang, Xianling sect would probably already have been annihilated by Yunshao sect half a year ago. Yi Qingtang did not reply. Her eyes were devoid of warmth as she looked at the countless tombs in the surroundings. She would personally take revenge for these disciples who died tragically. Yi Qingtang left after staying in Xianling sect for a day, and she was at the Imperial City the next time she appeared. Yunshao sect was located within the Imperial City of Formidable Heavens Dynasty. Eldest young lady, Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin greeted Yi Qingtang with reverence outside the imperial city. All the senior members of the Yi family were dispatched in this operation. The 7 yin-yang perfected lords, including Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin, as well as the disciples, were all present. Yi Qingtang had made up her mind to destroy Yunshao sect completely this time, no matter what it took. All right. Yi Qingtang swept her eyes across the army of people. Excluding herself, this force of the Yi family was sufficient to overpower Yunshao sect substantially. Currently, Yunshao sect had not warred against the Yi family but already had heavy losses. 5 elders were killed by Yi Qingtang, and even Yunshao sect's most important combat force, the sect protector Divine Beast, was also slain by Yi Qingtang. Eldest young lady, do you still need to make any preparations? Taoist Zijin looked at Yi Qingtang and asked. No, said Yi Qingtang. A mere Yunshao sect did not have any qualifications to make her prepare anything. Although Yunshao sect's foundation was strong, it posed no threat to a young lord no matter how strong it was. Moreover, Yi Qingtang would not give Yunshao sect any time or chance to activate their foundation. At this instant, a group of guards at the imperial city saw Yi Qingtang and the rest and originally wanted to stop them. However, after seeing Bai Kuei, all of them were dumbfounded and no longer had any intention to stop them. Visit website our list novel. Bai Kuei was Formidable Heavens Dynasty's Grand Imperial Sire and a yin-yang perfected Lord Third Heaven figure. Once the guards returned to their senses and wanted to greet the Grand Imperial Sire, they realized that the troop of people had already entered the imperial city and were nowhere to be seen. About 15 minutes later, Elder Bai Kuei led Yi Qingtang to the periphery of the imperial city. Right ahead was Yunshao sect. Although a super sect like Yunshao sect had nothing to do with the Formidable Heavens dynasty, it was situated within the imperial city, and thus, Elder Bai Kuei knew something about it. Although Yunshao sect's foundation is powerful, it is nothing to you, eldest young lady. However, it said that one of their sect protector Divine Beasts seemed to have advanced recently, and its combat power is rather high, Elder Bai Kuei said. I have already killed that sect protector Divine Beast, said Yi Qingtang. Elder Bai Kuei nodded and was not surprised at all. No matter how powerful that Yunshao sect protector Divine Beast was, it was as weak as a piece of paper before a young lord and could be easily killed without much effort. A cold glint flashed across Yi Qingtang's eyes as she looked at Yunshao sect ahead. Swoosh! Numerous Yi family war flags flew in the air. Kill! Taoist Zijin shouted sternly. Along with Taoist Zijin's orders, countless powerful auras surged to the sky and instantly enveloped Yunshao sect in them. Chapter 1042 Who is Afraid of Who? 2. Sensing the aura of the Yi family powerful figures, the senior members and wardens of Yunshao sect were alarmed. Who is so daring to behave unmannerly at my Yunshao sect? A warden instantly flew out of Yunshao sect and yelled sternly. This Yunshao sect warden's eyes were ice cold. He had been at Yunshao sect for a long time and never once thought that there would be anyone who dared to act wildly at the doorsteps of Yunshao sect. The Yunshao sect warden was startled when he saw the Yi family war flags. This war flag appeared very foreign, and he did not know which force these people were from. Who are you all? Report your names. How dare you all behave so wildly at the doorsteps of my Yunshao sect? The Yunshao sect warden looked at Yi Qingtang and the rest and shouted sternly. Bai Kuei. Elder Bai Kuei stepped forward and said coldly. Upon hearing that, the Yunshao sect warden frowned slightly. When he saw Bai Kuei's face clearly, he was taken aback and extremely astounded. As a Yunshao sect warden, it was impossible for him to not know the Formidable Heavens dynasty's Grand Imperial Sire, the most powerful cultivator of Formidable Heavens dynasty with a horrifying combat power of a yin-yang perfected Lord Third Heaven. Formidable Heavens dynasty Grand Imperial Sire. Very quickly, the Yunshao sect warden frowned as he looked at Elder Bai Kuei. Grand Imperial Sire Bai Kuei, what is the meaning of this? Although Bai Kuei was the Grand Imperial Sire of Formidable Heavens dynasty, he never had any enmity with Yunshao sect. Not mentioning this Grand Imperial Sire, Yunshao sect and Formidable Heavens dynasty had always minded their own businesses without interfering with the other. It thus seemed unacceptable that the formidable Heavens dynasty's grand imperial sire brought so many cultivators and behaved this way at the doorsteps of Yunshao sect. As he spoke, 10+ wardens and several elders rushed out of Yunshao sect. Bai Kuei, our Yunshao sect and the formidable Heavens dynasty never had anything to do with each other. What is the meaning of your actions today? An elderly with white hair shouted coldly at Bai Kuei. The person who spoke was Yunshao sect's great elder, Zhou Tian. He was at the peak of Yin-Yang perfected Lord Second Heaven and was considered acquaintances with Bai Kuei. Zhou, I am not here today as the grand imperial sire of formidable Heavens dynasty, Bai Kuei snickered as he looked at that elderly. After hearing that, the Yunshao sect great elder frowned deeply as he did not understand what Bai Kuei meant. Regardless of what identity Bai Kuei was assuming to challenge the Yunshao sect, given Yunshao sect's foundation, they were not the least afraid even if the entire formidable Heavens dynasty royals attacked them, much less Bai Kuei. Humph. The grand elders of Yuehua sect and Lingyun sect are here at Yunshao sect as visitors. If you know what's good for you, leave now. Yunshao sect can treat it as though nothing happened today. The Yunshao sect great elder looked at Bai Kuei impatiently. Kill. Nonetheless, Bai Kuei did not bother as he raised his right arm and shouted coldly. As Elder Bai Kuei gave his orders, the Yin-Yang perfected lords of the Yi family immediately charged towards the Yunshao sect wardens and elders. Noticing the situation, the talented Yi family disciples smirked. One of the youths at half-step Yin-Yang perfected Lord Realm snickered. I've heard that Yunshao sect is arrogant and conceited, but I never thought that it would be to this extent. Brothers and sisters, let's show Yunshao sect what disparity is. Kill. In a moment, hundreds of talented disciples flexed their muscles, drew their weapons, and attacked Yunshao sect. Chapter 1043 Who is afraid of who? 3. Noticing the situation, the Yunshao sect great elder was stunned and was even in disbelief. Originally, he thought that Bai Kuei would definitely not dare to really take action, yet currently, you have a death wish. The Yunshao sect wardens hollered furiously and slashed their swords at the Yin-Yang perfected lords charging towards them. A warden's eyes were filled with malice and evil as he attacked a branch master of the Yi family. That branch master joined the Yi family not long ago, but he was extremely skilled. His energy and aura were overwhelming and even more powerful than ordinary Yin-Yang perfected lords, which was why Yi Qingtang specially appointed him as a branch master. Boom boom. In the next second, the Yunshao sect warden's sword landed on the branch master's left shoulder. However, at this instant, the Yunshao sect warden was appalled. When his sword landed on this person, it was as though he was slashing extremely hard metal. The Yi family branch master was unharmed, and the Yunshao sect warden's hand numbed instead. Do you only have this little strength? The Yi family branch master looked at the Yunshao sect warden and immediately stretched his neck. How disappointing. You. The Yunshao sect warden was infuriated. However, after sensing the aura of this middle-aged man before him, he was instantly dumbfounded, and his eyes widened. Young, perfected lord? This Yunshao sect warden never thought that this plain-looking middle-aged man would actually be a Yin-Yang perfected lord. Die! The Yi family branch master shouted coldly and gently slashed the Yunshao sect warden's neck using his palm as a knife. In an instant, the Yunshao sect warden's skull flew to the sky while his headless body staggered a few steps before falling to the ground. He was breathless in no time and died. Yin-Yang perfected lord, also a Yin-Yang perfected lord, how can it be? The ordinary elders and wardens of Yunshao sect paled after sensing the aura of the powerful figures of the Yi family. There were several Yin-Yang perfected lords among the cultivators that Bai Kuei brought over. There were only a few Yin-Yang perfected lords in Yunshao sect. Get lost! The Yunshao sect great elder yelled angrily and focused power in his fingertip to force a Yin-Yang perfected lord to retreat. The Yunshao sect great elder had already reached the peak of a Yin-Yang perfected lord's second heaven, and it was simply impossible for an ordinary Yin-Yang perfected lord to fight against him. Zhou Tin, let me play with you. Suddenly, Taoist Zijin leaped out and instantly turned into fast shadows that intersected and overlapped each other in the air so rapidly that one could not distinguish him with the naked eye. Taoist Zijin? The Yunshao sect Great Elder was astonished to see Taoist Zijin. Taoist Zijin was renowned and had a reputation in this mainland. However, why would he and the formidable Heavens Dynasty's Grand Imperial Sire Bai Kuei come here to fight against Yunshao sect? Humph! The Yunshao sect Great Elder sneered as his palm met Taoist Zijin's. Boom! A loud sound erupted as though the sky exploded. The Yunshao sect Great Elder retreated backward as blood seeped out from the corners of his mouth, clearly in the disadvantage from the one-palm confrontation with Taoist Zijin earlier. Chapter 1044 Skill 1. The Great Elder stared at the number of people in Bai Kuei's team and frowned heavily. There were at least 7 yin-yang perfected lords including Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin. Furthermore, both of their abilities had passed the 3rd heaven of the yin-yang perfected lord. Though their force was extremely strong, there were guests from the Baiming Manor in the Yunshao sect today besides the Grand Elders from the Yuehua sect and the Lingyun sect. If Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin dared to attack them, they would definitely provoke the Baiming Manor. Yunshao sect belonged to the Baiming Manor. Bai Kuei, Taoist Zijin, the Yunshao sect has nothing to do with you. If you still want to challenge us, we will not hold back anymore. The Great Elder of Yunshao sect stared at the few yin-yang perfected lords and shouted coldly. Taoist Zijin scoffed and said, "Zhou Tin, what's the point of holding back when it has come to this situation? Furthermore, how will Yunshao sect care for us anyway?" You. The Great Elder of the Yunshao sect clenched his teeth tightly and wished that he could tear Taoist Zijin's skin. Boom. Suddenly, a few shadows rushed towards the crowds of wardens. Within a few breaths, a few wardens' heads were chopped off by branch masters of the Yi family. The Great Elder of the Yunshao sect was very strong but was weaker than Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin. He was about to run when he realized that the situation was not good for him. "Where do you want to go?" Bai Kuei scoffed and followed the Great Elder immediately. However, a few elders of the Yunshao sect immediately rushed forward to block Bai Kuei's way. "Get lost!" Bai Kuei shouted. Before anyone could realize what was going on, the few elders who were at half-step yin-yang perfected lord level were thrown out by Bai Kuei's aura. The Great Elder of the Yunshao sect fled into the Yunshao sect at the same time. Bai Kuei exchanged a glance with Taoist Zijin. There were many powerful people in the Yunshao sect. It was too risky for the two of them to break into Yunshao sect unless Yi Qingtang took the lead. However, Yi Qingtang was the strongest force of the Yi family. She could not just attack impulsively without the appearance of the main opponent. When Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin were discussing what they should do next, around 10 people walked out of the Yunshao sect under the Great Elder's lead. The 2 elders in white robe were the Grand Elders of the Yuehua sect and the Lingyun sect. They came to the Yunshao sect as they heard that guests from the Baiming Manor were here. However, the Great Elder of the Yunshao sect said that there were people here to find trouble with them. There was a middle-aged man in a purple robe standing there with prestige. A golden cloud was sewed on his chest area. The man was the sect master of the Yunshao sect. Bai Kuei, Taoist Zijin, are there any misunderstandings between the Yunshao sect and you? Why would you come here to find trouble with us? The sect master of the Yunshao sect looked at Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin and said indifferently. There were 7 yin-yang perfected lords in the crowd. You offended someone that you should never even try to provoke. The punishment will be the extermination of the Yunshao sect. Taoist Zijin scoffed and said. Chapter 1045 Skill 2. The sect master shouted in rage, Bai Kuei, I respect you as the Grand Imperial Sire of the formidable Heavens Dynasty. For all these years, Yunshao sect had nothing to do with the formidable Heavens Dynasty. You come here for death today. We come here for death? Bai Kuei stared at the Yunshao sect master and sneered. Who was the one that was going to die? Humph. An elder landed from mid-air and scoffed heavily. No one dared to offend us like this since the Yunshao sect was established a few hundred years ago. How dare you say that you want to exterminate my sect today? The Yunshao sect master nodded towards the elder, who was the Grand Elder of the Yunshao sect. He was at the peak of the third heaven of Yin-Yang perfected Lord. Li Shihai. A cold glint flashed across Bai Kuei's eyes as he saw the Grand Elder of the Yunshao sect. When Bai Kuei was the crown prince of the formidable Heavens dynasty, Li Shihai was the sect master of the Yunshao sect. They had no interactions back then. However, around 10 years ago, a beloved lady of Bai Kuei was taken away by Li Shihai using some tricks. Though Bai Kuei and the lady was not married to him, he resented Li Shihai for taking away his wife. After that, Bai Kuei became the emperor of the formidable Heavens dynasty, and Li Shihai became the sect master of Yunshao sect. After becoming the emperor, Bai Kuei took the responsibility of ruling the entire formidable Heavens dynasty. He could not just take his revenge from Li Shihai. Until today, I was still thinking who's here. Bai Kuei, based on your ability, what can you do to me? You could not do anything back then when you were the crown prince of formidable Heavens dynasty. Your beloved lady still came to me. I shall tell you here. Indeed, I used some tricks to get her. However, she killed herself not long after I got here. What can you do today even though you know all this? The Grand Elder of the Yunshao sect landed slowly and scoffed as he stared at Bai Kuei. The two Grand Elders of Yuehua sect and Lingyun sect had odd expressions. Though they were aware that the Grand Elder of the Yunshao sect was very arrogant, he should not reveal all the inhumane things he did in the past in front of everyone. It was fortunate that there were no disciples present. Not his reputation. Of course, Li Shihai never cared for his reputation. He only acted according to his own preferences. Li Shihai, you're seeking your own death. Bai Kuei's face was flushed, and veins could be seen on his forehead. Though Bai Kuei was at the age that he could resist all temptations, as a martial cultivator, the hatred he had could last forever. The main culprit who took away his wife dared to reveal everything again. Sush. Bai Kuei took out a purple-black-grade divine weapon. As he waved his sword, the great aura of a yin-yang perfected lord rushed into the sky as if he was going to tear Li Shihai into pieces. The Grand Elder of Yunshao sect scorned. His body turned into a shadow, and he took out a simplistic sword from his space ring. At the next second, he was next to Bai Kuei. The two shadows were appearing everywhere as they fought against each other. However, Bai Kuei was disadvantaged within 10 attacks. Bai Kuei was at the third heaven of the yin-yang perfected lord. However, the Grand Elder of Yunshao sect was at the peak of third heaven of yin-yang perfected lord. Chapter 1046 Skill 3. It was lucky for Bai Kuei that he was able to last 10 attacks against the Grand Elder. He would be dreaming if he could beat the Grand Elder of Yunshao sect with his own ability. It seems like you don't even see me with your eyes. Taoist Zijin scoffed when he saw that Bai Kuei was not able to fight against the Grand Elder. He immediately came towards them and joined the fight together with Bai Kuei. Li Shihai, you're such a rotten asshole. Wait for my ruling gourd. Taoist Zijin took out a gourd and threw it into the air. The three of them were sucked in by the ruling gourd immediately. The gourd suddenly grew in size and became transparent. Everything happening inside could be seen clearly from outside. The ruling gourd was plucked from the ancient ruling tree on Tiankuan Mountain. It's able to block all martial ability. Rotten asshole, don't dream to use any of your ability inside here. Taoist Zijin scorned. Everyone else was shocked as they heard his words. Such a terrifying Dharma treasure. The Grand Elder's expression changed as he could feel that all his martial ability in his body was disappearing. How come I feel that my martial ability is lost as well? Suddenly, Bai Kuei looked at Taoist Zijin, frowned, and asked. Of course, everyone's martial ability will be lost inside my ruling gourd, Taoist Zijin said. Bai Kuei nodded and asked, how about you? Same. Taoist Zijin explained. Bai Kuei's lips twitched. So what was the point for Taoist Zijin putting all of them inside the ruling gourd? Then the two of you are pieces of junk as well. The Grand Elder of Yunshao sect laughed coldly. The two of us are good enough to beat you. Taoist Zijin scorned as well. Kill him. Taoist Zijin rushed towards the Grand Elder immediately. In other people's eyes, The two powerful yin-yang perfected lords now fought like gangsters without any martial ability. What are you waiting for? Taoist Zijin looked towards Bai Kuei as he fought against the Grand Elder. Bai Kuei did not hesitate and joined the fight. The two of them kicked and punched the Grand Elder heavily. Based on their third heaven of yin-yang perfected lord's ability, they would not able to beat the Grand Elder even if they combined their forces. The difference between the normal third heaven and the peak was huge. However, inside the gourd that restricted all martial ability, the three of them were just normal people. The consequences were clear when the two of them fought against a useless Grand Elder. Within a short while, the Grand Elder was injured heavily. His face was swollen under Taoist Zijin's and Bai Kuei's punches. The side with more people would, of course, have more advantages than the other side in the ruling gourd. Chapter 1047 Skill 4. Yi Qingtang's lips twitched a little as she witnessed the situation inside the gourd. This might be the most special fight she had seen between yin-yang perfected lords. It was almost impossible to find others who fought like Taoist Zijin and Bai Kuei in the world. They were no different from gangsters. There were no tricks. All their punches landed heavily on the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder cursed in rage inside the gourd as he wished to tear them into pieces. However, he could not defend himself at all. Occasionally, he managed to kick Taoist Zijin, but the kick seemed to have no effect. Buzz. Around half an hour later, a weird sound came out of the ruling gourd. The three of them were thrown out by the gourd as it returned to its original size. What happened? Bai Kuei asked. There is a time limitation to the ruling gourd. Apparently time's up. What a pity that we didn't manage to beat him to death, Taoist Zijin said. Though the Grand Elder was a piece of junk inside the ruling gourd, it was easy for the two of them to fight against him, but it was hard to kill him. The Grand Elder's injuries were all recovered without any traces after leaving the ruling gourd. As his martial ability was regained, the injuries from the punches would definitely be gone. It seems you have a death wish. After regaining his martial ability, the Grand Elder stared at Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin. As he shouted, the aura of the peak level of yin-yang perfected Lord Third Heaven exploded and surrounded the two of them. The Grand Elder turned into a shadow in the next second. He was so fast that he landed beside Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin within a split second. The three of them were engaged in the fight again. However, within a few breaths, Taoist Zijin and Bai Kuei were thrown out. Hee, how much hatred do you have towards me, Bai Kuei? I made you feel the greatest humiliation as a man. However, you cannot do anything to me. So heartbreaking. The Grand Elder scorned as he stared at Bai Kuei. A cold glint flashed across Yi Qingtang's eyes at that. She wished that Bai Kuei could settle this thing by himself previously. However, based on the current situation, Bai Kuei was not able to fight against the Grand Elder. Really? Yi Qingtang scorned. Yi Qingtang lifted her right arm slightly. Without realizing what was happening, the Grand Elder lost control of his body under a strong and irresistible force. The sect master of Yunshao sect was enraged. He did not feel the intense force from Yi Qingtang. He thought that it was just a junior brought by Bai Kuei. How dare you to speak up as a junior? You're seeking your own death. Before the Grand Elder was pulled to Yi Qingtang, the Yunshao sect master flew and smashed his palm towards her. How dare you? A few branch masters immediately surrounded Yi Qingtang and fought off the Yunshao sect master. The two Grand Elders of Yuehua sect and Lingyun sect frowned heavily as they witnessed the scene. Chapter 1048 Skill 5. The two of them rushed forward and forced the branch masters to step back with their strong martial aura. The Grand Elder of Yuehua sect sneered. Young people, do you know what respect is? If you apologize to the Yunshao sect and leave now, maybe we can spare your lives, the Grand Elder of Lingyun sect said. Grand Elders, you have nothing to do with what's going on here. Or do you want to be involved as well? Yi Qingtang stepped out to face the two Grand Elders. The two Grand Elders were shocked by the young lattice words. This young lady seems familiar. Have I seen her somewhere else? The Grand Elder of Yuehua sect looked at Yi Qingtang in surprise. Is she the disciple of Xianling sect? The one who was so lucky to get the infant fiend celestial beast at the 100-level peril hell of Avisnaraka. The Grand Elder of Lingyun sect sized up Yi Qingtang, and his eyes were filled with joy. They had seen drawings of Yi Qingtang before. The young lady in front of them must be the Xianling sect disciple Yi Qingtang. And she had an infant fiend celestial beast. Ha! I did not expect to be so lucky today to be at the Yunshao sect. The Grand Elder of Lingyun sect laughed. He must get the infant fiend celestial beast today. Young one, hand over the infant fiend celestial beast, and I'll spare your life. The Grand Elder of Yuehua sect stared at Yi Qingtang and tried to threaten her. Are you even qualified to get the fiend celestial beast? Yi Qingtang scanned through the two Grand Elders coldly. The two Grand Elders were enraged upon hearing her words. They did not expect that the young one would be so rude and arrogant that she was not even afraid of her own death. However, at the next second, their pupils constricted. The aura of a young lord rushed into the sky. It seemed that an ancient god-fiend arrived and surrounded everything in darkness, forcing everyone to kneel down in fear. The two Grand Elders felt that their bodies were about to be ripped apart by the terrifying aura of a young lord. They did not even question that they would be killed without any traces left as long as the person in front of them wished to. Young lord, how is this even possible? The Grand Elder of Lingyun sect's face was pale as he stared at Yi Qingtang, who appeared to be a giant god-fiend. His body was soaked with cold sweat. Young lord, only when one reached the seventh heaven of Yin Yang perfected lord could a person then be called a young lord. However, the person in front of them was at the peak of seventh heaven of Yin Yang perfected lord. She was just a little step away from entering the eighth heaven. Only at this moment did the Grand Elder of Yuehua sect understand that the person was not a disciple of Xianling sect. He found it weird how a disciple could survive in the 100-level peril hell of Avisnaraka and get a fiend celestial beast. It was even more unbelievable that she was able to leave the hell of Avisnaraka with the fiend celestial beast. Everything could be explained if the person was a young lord. Chapter 1049 Skill 6. Moreover, how could a dignified fiend celestial beast fancy an ordinary sect disciple? The lady before them was none other than a genuine, unrivaled young lord. Damn it! Which dimwit released false information that the person who obtained the infant fiend celestial beast was an ordinary Xianling sect disciple. The Lingyun sect Grand Elder gritted his teeth. At this instant, the Yuehua sect master shuddered as he looked at the Yi family war flags, which were held high by the talented youths. It was at this moment when he finally understood what the Yi surname on the war flag represented. The name of this young lord was probably Yi Qingtang, and the Yi war flag probably represented the family clan of this young lord. No wonder Formidable Heavens Dynasty's Grand Imperial Sire Bai Kuei and that veteran Yin Yang perfected lord proclaimed to be a member of the Yi family. For a daunting family clan with a powerful figure at the peak of Yin Yang perfected lord seventh heaven, it was Bai Kuei's and Taoist Zijin's honor to join the family clan. Say, Senior, I was unaware of your arrival. Please pardon me and not be hard on me. The Yuehua sect Grand Elder stared at Yi Qingtang in horror. He was facing an authentic young lord. I remember that you wanted me to hand over the fiend celestial beast? Yi Qingtang stared at the Yuehua sect Grand Elder and said coldly. Upon hearing that, the Yuehua sect Grand Elder shuddered and instinctively shook his head without thinking. No. Senior, I did not say that. It's him. He said it. The Yuehua sect Grand Elder immediately pointed at the Lingyun sect Grand Elder. Don't spout nonsense. When did I ask Senior to hand over the fiend celestial beast? I don't even know what a fiend celestial beast is. What do I need it for? It must be you. You offended the Senior and want to shift the blame to me now. Lingyun sect Grand Elder denied anxiously. It's clearly you who asked the Senior for the fiend celestial beast. Why don't you dare to admit it? Even saying that you don't know what a fiend celestial beast is? I think you're the one who is spouting nonsense. Yuehua sect Grand Elder sneered. The hundreds of talented Yi family disciples behind Yi Qingtang snickered as they watched the two Grand Elders of super sects blame each other. This was the so-called powerful Grand Elder of a super sect. Before absolute strength, they were just like clowns. If their super sect's disciples were present and saw their own grand elder behaving this way, how would they think? Would they feel the slightest disgrace? Previously, when Yi Qingtang appeared, the Yunshao sect master, great elder, and even grand elder were delighted. However, after knowing that Yi Qingtang was an unrivaled young lord, they were completely dumbfounded. Didn't the two of you want to protect Yunshao sect? A Yi family branch master looked at the two grand elders and scoffed. Yunshao sect. Lingyun's sect grand elder shook his head repeatedly. Senior Yi, this is a misunderstanding. A great misunderstanding. We are actually not that close with Yunshao sect. We just happened to pass by here today and came in to take a seat. Senior, we have nothing to do with your enmity with Yunshao sect. Right. Senior Yi, we have nothing to do with Yunshao sect. This Yunshao sect is really audacious. How dare they offend you, Senior? They deserve to die. Definitely deserve to die. Senior, if you need us to do anything, just tell us. Yuehua sect grand elder added hurriedly. Chapter 1050 Baiming Manor, 1. Neither the Yuehua sect grand elder nor Lingyun sect grand elder dared to be impetuous when they learned that Yi Qingtang was a young lord. Never would they have thought that Yunshao sect actually offended a young lord. If it was by Kuei or Taoist Zijin, the grand elders could still stand on Yunshao sect's side. However, it was impossible for them to go against a young lord if they wanted to live a longer life. The two super sect's grand elders stood before Yi Qingtang in silence, deeply afraid that she would execute them when displeased. Yi Qingtang swept a look at the two of them and subsequently said, "Get lost." After hearing Yi Qingtang, the Lingyun sect grand elder nodded his head repeatedly and disappeared without a trace. Farewell, Senior. Farewell. If there's anything that you need my Yuehua sect for in the future, you may just inform us. The Yuehua sect grand elder disappeared immediately after saying that. Yi Qingtang did not have any enmity with Lingyun sect and Yuehua sect and did not wish to start another war. Thus, letting these two grand elders leave was sufficient. At this instant, the Yunshao sect masses were dumbfounded and even had goosebumps as they looked at Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang's martial skills were too frightening. On this mainland, a young lord was almost unparalleled, and even a super sect was nothing to a young lord. Yunshao sect master and grand elders stared at Yi Qingtang in astonishment. They would have never thought that Yi Qingtang was actually a young lord. Come here. Then Yi Qingtang raised her right arm and a powerful force swept over. In at most 2 breaths' time, Yi Qingtang had already clutched onto the Yunshao sect grand elder's throat. You seemed to be very arrogant earlier on, Yi Qingtang said coldly as she glared at the Yunshao sect grand elder. The Yunshao sect grand elder shuddered, and his face paled after hearing Yi Qingtang's words. He did not know what he should say, and everything that happened seemed to be an unbelievable dream. 1 hour ago, they were still chatting with the Baiming Manor envoy within the sect, but a short while later, a young lord came searching for them. Yi Qingning, even if you are a young lord, our Yunshao sect is affiliated to Baiming Manor. However powerful you are, do you dare to ignore the Baiming Manor? Yunshao sect grand elder looked at Yi Qingtang and shouted. Baiming Manor. The Yi family members were in thought upon hearing that. Baiming Manor was one of the extraordinary forces of this mainland and was on par with the Phantom Valley and Peerless School. They were known as the 3 mightiest sect forces. It was said that the Baiming Manor chief was a young lord of Yin Yang perfected Lord 8th Heaven, and his martial skills were unrivaled. Yi Qingtang did not have any thoughts about Baiming Manor as she did not have any grudges against them. It would be best if they did not interfere with this matter, but if they insisted, Yi Qingtang would definitely not do nothing. Seeing that Yi Qingtang was silent, Yunshao sect master thought that Yi Qingtang was afraid of Baiming Manor, and he sneered. So what if you are a young lord? There are countless powerful figures in Baiming Manor, and the manor chief is an 8th heaven young lord. If you dare to touch my Yunshao sect today, it is equivalent to opposing Baiming Manor. Chapter 1051 Baiming Manor, 2. Yi Qingtang looked at the Yunshao sect master rather impatiently. Without saying much, young Lord Aura surged out, and the Yunshao sect master's body exploded into innumerable pieces of flesh before everyone's eyes. The Yunshao sect master's skills were not as powerful as that of the Yunshao sect Grand Elder. Thus, he was unable to withstand Yi Qingtang's aura suppression. Witnessing the tragic death of the Yunshao sect master, the Yunshao sect masses paled and gasped. Without giving them time to return to their senses, Yi Qingtang moved her wrist and twisted the Yunshao sect Grand Elder's neck. In no time, Yunshao sect master and Grand Elder were both killed by Yi Qingtang. "Run!" The Yunshao sect Great Elder shouted at the top of his lungs when he noticed that the situation was bad and immediately fled towards the interior of Yunshao sect. Yunshao sect's foundation was extremely powerful, and as long as they could flee back into Yunshao sect, it was difficult to annihilate Yunshao sect even if Yi Qingtang was a young lord. If Yunshao sect master and Grand Elder knew that Yi Qingtang was a young lord, they would definitely not step out of Yunshao sect. "Where are you all running to?" Yi Qingtang shouted coldly, and her young lord aura swept across the entire place, killing the Yunshao sect Great Elder instantly. As the Yunshao sect Great Elder was also killed by Yi Qingtang, Yunshao sect became completely disunited, and the remaining elders and wardens remained rooted to the ground, shivering, without daring to move an inch. As long as Yi Qingtang was willing, all of them would be killed by her before they could even make it back into Yunshao sect. If Yunshao sect Grand Elder and sect master countered this battle within the sect, they definitely would not have died so quickly given Yunshao sect's foundation. Seeing that Yunshao sect Grand Elder died from the impact of Yi Qingtang's young lord aura, Elder Baikue finally felt that he had finally avenged his wife. It was just a pity that he was not the one who personally killed the Yunshao sect Grand Elder. From now on, Yunshao sect no longer exists and will be annexed by the Yi family. Anyone who resists will be killed. If sect disciples wish to leave, don't stop them. Taoist Zijin announced loudly a moment later. Whether it was a war between sects or family clans, the defeated party must pay a terrible price, and even a foundation that had been passed down for thousands of years would belong to the victor. Currently, Yunshao sect Grand Elder, sect master, and Great Elder were all dead, and Yunshao sect had no leader. It was impossible for them to battle with the Yi family, which had a young lord. From then on, Yunshao sect would belong to the Yi family. Yes. The several branch masters and talented disciples immediately responded. At this instant, the Grand Elders of Yuehua sect and Lingyun sect had not left and were hiding above the clouds to observe the situation. However, when they saw the Yunshao sect Grand Elder and sect master being slain by that young lord in an instant, their backs were drenched with cold sweat. It was fortunate that they made the right judgment, or else their outcome would be no different from Yunshao sect. The envoy from Baiming Manor is still within Yunshao sect. Yunshao sect is an affiliate of Baiming Manor. I'm afraid the Baiming Manor will not leave this matter alone. The Yuehua sect Grand Elder looked at the Lingyun sect Grand Elder beside him. The Yi family only has one young lord. How can it contend against Baiming Manor, which is one of the three mighty forces of this mainland? There will be a good show to watch now. The Lingyun Grand Elder nodded. Chapter 1052 Baiming Manor, 3. Yunshao sect's annihilation was a given, but no one had expected it to be annihilated so quickly. A dignified super sect with centuries of foundation, however, became part of the Yi family in such a short period of time. At this instant, the Yi family disciples and several branch masters were covered with murderous auras. This was their first battle since becoming part of the Yi family. This war was truly too shocking. Yunshao sect was wiped out so swiftly that they did not even make any moves. It was also because of such that the Yi family members finally witnessed the unparalleled powers of a young lord. Even if Yunshao sect was a super sect and had powerful foundations, it still ended up in such an ending. Anyone who wishes to resist the Yi family, come out. At this instant, a Yi family disciple swept across the remaining elders and wardens in Yunshao sect and shouted coldly. However, no one dared to say anything. Humph. So what about your Yi family? You all will still face death after offending Baiming Manor. A Yunshao sect disciple who appeared from nowhere said coldly. You have a death wish. Upon hearing that, A glint flashed across the eyes of that Yi family youth at the half-step yin-yang perfected Lord Realm. With a clank, that Yunshao sect disciple's head was already chopped off by the Yi family disciple before the Yunshao sect disciple knew what happened. Clank. He unsheathed and sheathed his sword in one breath, and that was all it took to kill someone. Any resistors, kill. The Yi family youth shouted loudly, and he was brimming with killing intent. Little young one, how arrogant of you! All of a sudden, a bone-curdling cold filled the air, and the temperature of the surroundings dropped to the freezing point in an instant. A middle-aged man in a gold Chinese robe walked out of Yunshao sect slowly with a young male and female beside him. That man's martial skills were frightening and had already reached the peak of yin-yang perfected Lord Fourth Heaven. Baiming Manor Envoy. In the sky, the Yuehua sect Grand Elders and Lingyun sect Grand Elders' eyes twinkled when they saw the appearance of that middle-aged man. It seemed that Yunshao sect's annihilation enraged Baiming Manor utterly. Beneath, the Yi family talented disciple shivered at that cold shout, and his body retreated backward. The Yi family talented youth was merely a half-step yin-yang perfected lord and naturally could not contest against the Baiming Manor envoy, who was at the peak of yin-yang perfected Lord Fourth Heaven. You're pretty arrogant yourself too. Yi Qingtang hollered immediately and easily dissipated the powerful martial aura of that Baiming Manor envoy. It was only until then did the Yi family youth's complexion improve, and he looked at Yi Qingtang with gratitude. A young lord is here. Hurry, bow and pay your respects to the young lord. A Yi family branch master looked at the Baiming Manor envoy without fear and sneered. The Baiming Manor envoy frowned slightly upon hearing that. She's actually a young lord. How dare you! The Baiming Manor envoy yelled in fury. I am Baiming Manor's great warden. How dare you make me bow and pay my respects? The Baiming Manor great warden was the head of all wardens. Although his position was lower than that of elders and the chief, he was also considered to have a high position and authority, and he represented Baiming Manor with full authority when he was out. How dare this force make him bow and pay respects? Chapter 1053 Baiming Manor, 4. This so-called Yi family was a disorderly mob. Could it be that it had never heard of the three mighty forces of this mainland? Everyone still had a certain level of fear towards the Baiming Manor. Thus, the Yi family branch master remained silent. After all, Yi family only had one young lord while Baiming Manor had more than one. Seeing that the Yi family branch master no longer spoke, the Baiming Manor envoy nodded in satisfaction. Nonetheless, he was still curious as to why a young lord, who even seemed so young, appeared out of nowhere when there was only a handful of young lords on this mainland. You are the young lord of the Yi family. The Baiming Manor envoy looked at Yi Qingtang and said, Yes, so what if I am? Yi Qingtang replied indifferently. She did not have any enmity with Baiming Manor and did not wish to complicate matters by having any relations with Baiming Manor. However, if Baiming Manor failed to appreciate her favor and insisted on poking their nose into this matter, it was fine with Yi Qingtang as well. Yi Qingtang had never liked causing trouble, but this did not mean that she was afraid of trouble. Good. Not bad. It is indeed unbelievable that you can become a young lord at such a young age. My Baiming Manor admires you greatly. If you're willing, you can join my Baiming Manor, and you can freely choose any position that you want. The Baiming Manor envoy looked at Yi Qingtang and said, In other territories, the Baiming Manor envoy represented the entire Baiming Manor, and everything he said was equivalent to what the Baiming Manor chief said. Thus, since he said that, it was definitely effective. The three mighty forces of this mainland would all wish to snatch this young lord. Regardless of the Phantom Valley, Peerless School, or Baiming Manor, their control and power would become even more powerful if they had an additional young lord. Oh! Yi Qingtang looked at the Baiming Manor envoy and said with a seeming smile. Do you mean what you say? Of course I do. Arrogance filled the Baiming Manor envoy's face. I am a Baiming Manor envoy, and everything I say represents the Baiming Manor. As long as you are willing to join and dedicate yourself to my Baiming Manor, you can pick any position you want in Baiming Manor. All right. Yi Qingtang said. If that's the case, I want the Baiming Manor chief position. Do you think it's possible? Everyone at the scene was stunned by Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang actually wanted to become the Baiming Manor chief. What are you saying? The Baiming Manor envoy's eyes were ice cold. This girl was so young yet so arrogant and conceited to want the Baiming Manor chief position. Although Yi Qingtang was not familiar with the three mighty forces of this mainland, she was very clear with their routine. Phantom Valley, Baiming Manor, and Peerless School were currently in a state of check and balance, and no one wished to break this balance. However, if Yi Qingtang chose to join one side, this balance would definitely be broken. Even if Yi Qingtang joined Baiming Manor, it would definitely not believe an outsider, especially when this outsider was a young lord. Once this young lord had any ideas, it was very possible that it would result in a serious imbalance. Moreover, Phantom Valley and Peerless School would face a relatively serious threat with Yi Qingtang's addition to Baiming Manor. By then, Peerless School and Phantom Valley would definitely join forces to annihilate Baiming Manor. Chapter 1054 Kill one of my people and I will slay your entire family. As one of the top 3 forces of this mainland, Baiming Manor definitely understood this logic. Although Yi Qingtang had become a young lord currently, she knew her limitations, something she was never lacking in no matter whether she was a holy venerate in the past life or currently. The 3 mighty forces of this mainland were not short of young lords and instead had very powerful young lords. Given her current skills, it was extremely difficult if she wished to fight any of these 3 forces head-on. Nonetheless, since Yi Qingtang became a young lord, these top 3 forces would definitely do something. Once Yi Qingtang joined one force, the other 2 forces would join hands and annihilate the force that Yi Qingtang joined. This was so in addition to the fact that the force that Yi Qingtang joined would be on their guard against her and secretly kill her in order to maintain the balance. However, if Yi Qingtang did not join any of the forces would be suspicious and paranoid that Yi Qingtang had already secretly made arrangements with the other 2 forces. As the skills of the top 3 forces were overly balanced, they definitely did not wish to see another young lord even if she did not join any forces and developed her own influence. Since that was the case, there was only one solution. Yi Qingtang would become enemies with one top force while the other 2 forces watched from a side and reaped the spoils. Especially for Baiming Manor, a young lord's appearance in formidable Heaven's dynasty would attract the suspicions of Peerless School and Phantom Valley. It was either that Yi Qingtang joins Baiming Manor and the Manor Chief decides whether to utilize or secretly kill her, or that Baiming Manor directly kills Yi Qingtang to let Peerless School and Phantom Valley know that they did not have any intention to break the balance of the 3 great forces. There were no other options apart from these. Baiming Manor's will is not something you can revolt against. The Baiming Manor envoy glared at Yi Qingtang coldly. Upon hearing that, Yi Qingtang's lips curled up into a sneer. If I have never even acknowledged the Baiming Manor chief, what are you? Bai Kuei and Daoist Zijin cast a cold eye at that Baiming Manor envoy. If he was not representing Baiming Manor to talk to Yi Qingtang, he would already be a dead man by now. Great. Indeed a young lord. How arrogant. The Baiming Manor envoy raised his volume and said coldly, My Baiming Manor has a 1,000-year foundation on this mainland, and you are the first who dares to defy Baiming Manor's will. Since that's the case, Baiming Manor will officially start a war with your Yi family. Although you are a young lord, not all of your family clan has skills like yours, the Baiming Manor envoy scoffed. His meaning was clear. Chapter 1055 3 Orders to Kill. When they heard Yi Qingtang's words, the looks of fear on the faces of Yi family members instantly vanished, never to be seen again. Only excitement and agitation remained. Just as Yi Qingtang said, if the Yi family was massacred, then Yi Qingtang would fight the Baiming Manor to the death. How terrifying would it be to have a powerful young lord lying in ambush? Also, could the few powerful young lords of Baiming Manor really guard tens of thousands of people every day without leaving their side? By then, the Baiming Manor would be unable to find Yi Qingtang, who would be lying in wait. But Yi Qingtang would be clearly aware of the Baiming Manor's position. Even if the young lords found Yi Qingtang, they might not be able to kill her with one stroke, causing Yi Qingtang's vengeance to be even crueler and terrifying. Then, the tens of thousands of people in Baiming Manor would live in fear, and those who had not yet become young lords would live in the shadow of death. The Yi family had a few hundred people, but the Baiming Manor had tens of thousands of people. However, the Baiming Manor master and young lords were not idiots. They did not dare touch a single hair on a Yi family disciple's head without first killing Yi Qingtang. At that moment, the Baiming Manor envoy gritted his teeth. If Yi Qingtang kept her word, tens of thousands of people from the Baiming Manor would die because they killed 100 people from the Yi family. Right now, there are over 100 Yi family disciples. I guarantee I will not act. Let me see if you dare to touch a single person. Yi Qingtang fixed her gaze on the Baiming Manor envoy and spoke with a cold laugh. You dare to touch me? At that moment, Elder Bai Kuei's grandson, Yi Leng, who had changed his surname to Yi, stepped forward and pointed to the Baiming Manor envoy. Would their Yi family be afraid of the Baiming Manor? It was worthwhile to exchange one person's life for a few thousand lives. Yi family, you will pay an unimaginably terrible price for your arrogance. Veins stood up on the Baiming Manor envoy's forehead. He did not dare to touch so much as a hair on a Yi family disciple's head. If this young lord really went crazy, the consequences would be unimaginable. The top 3 sects were very familiar with the young lords in this mainland. But what kind of personality did Yi Qingtang have, and would she actually do as she said? Who could be certain? When she saw that the Baiming Manor envoy was about to leave, Yi Qingtang stepped forward and blocked his way. The powerful force of a young lord immediately shot skywards. What are you doing? The Baiming Manor envoy was shocked when he saw what was happening. You've offended me. Shouldn't you leave something behind? Yi Qingtang stared at the Baiming Manor envoy and said coldly, when 2 major forces are in a battle, we are equivalent to envoys of war. How dare you ignore the rules and kill a war envoy? The Baiming Manor envoy said in shock. Of course I want. Yi Qingtang's lips curved upward slightly. Then she used the force of a young lord to press down on the Baiming Manor envoy. Puff! The Baiming Manor envoy's face was ashen. Blood shot out of his mouth as he repeatedly retreated. You dare harm my martial arts foundation. The Baiming Manor envoy stared at Yi Qingtang in shock. This young lord was completely disregarding the rules. I'm giving you a small punishment today. If you dare to be disrespectful to my Yi family in the future, your life will not be spared. Yi Qingtang shouted coldly. In the future, anyone who harms my Yi family disciples will be killed. In the future, anyone who impedes my Yi family affairs will be killed. In the future, anyone who harms my Yi family elders will be killed. Yi Qingtang's voice was bone-chilling. From that day onward, these 3 killing orders would reverberate through this mainland. Chapter 1056 3 Orders to Kill. 2. The moment Yi Qingtang issued her 3 killing orders, everyone in the Yi family became very emotional and felt uplifted. If anyone dared to offend a Yi family member, be it a disciple or an elder, the Yi family young lord would strike them dead with the swiftness of lightning. In all of history, this must be the family clan young lord that shielded her subordinates the most. The Baiming envoy glared at Yi Qingtang in rage but did not dare to say anything more. This Yi family young lord did not abide by the rules at all and had even seriously injured him even though he was a war envoy. If he said anything more, he might lose his life. Yi Qingtang, wait and see. Circumstances will change. We will meet again. The Baiming Manor envoy glared at Yi Qingtang, a cold light flickering in his eye. He fervently wished he could dismember Yi Qingtang to relieve the hatred in his heart. To the Baiming Manor envoy, this Yi family was a new power, and although it had a young lord that was almost invincible in this mainland, she was still too young. These people probably did not know how terrifying the Baiming Manor was. Get lost. Elder Bai Kuei looked at the Baiming Manor envoy and shouted at him coldly. If the Baiming Manor had not been present as an envoy, he would have died many times over today. How dare a mere lord be so arrogant and unrestrained in the presence of a young lord? Without further ado, the Baiming Manor envoy turned to leave and vanished in a moment. Both the grand elders of the Lingyun sect and the Yuehua sect, who were watching from above, could not help but exchange glances when they saw this scene. The Yi family young lord was truly impossibly arrogant. She did not even show any respect for the Baiming manor. Fortunately, they were both wise men who knew how to bide their time. Otherwise, their fates would probably have been the same as the Grand Elder of the Yunshao sect, with their heads sent rolling. The two super sect elders did not dare to linger in the area, and they swiftly vanished into the void. At that moment in the Yi family, Bai Kuei and Daoist Zijin led the group from the Yi family and charged into the Yunshao sect. The thousands of disciples in the Yunshao sect were all struck dumb. No one dared to resist at all. Everything was like a dream. Before today, the Yunshao sect was carrying on with its usual routine. However, within the short span of an hour, the Grand Elder and the Master of the Yunshao sect had both been killed. Even the Yunshao sect's Great Elder had died. None of the senior members of the sect dared to resist. They all wished to preserve their lives. As the saying went, even lowly insects cling to life, much less the Yunshao sect's wardens and elders. A powerful young lord was invincible. Forcibly resisting was the same as giving up one's life. However, as long as they did not resist, the Yi family would not act. They would give the Yunshao sect, which now completely lacked cohesion, a chance to survive. Yi Qingtang immediately ordered all the wardens and elders of the Yunshao sect to be expelled from the sect. This included the administrative personnel and all the Yunshao sect disciples. Not a single person was to remain. Within the short span of half a day, the glory of the Yunshao sect was completely dissipated and became a thing of the past. Everyone from the Yi family entered the Yunshao sect, which became the headquarters of the Yi family. The Yunshao sect contained countless jewels and fine gems. There were some that even Yi Qingtang felt were fairly unusual. It went without saying that the Yunshao sect had a great legacy. After all, it had existed for hundreds of years and was far beyond what the Xianling sect could compare to. Chapter 1057 3 Orders to Kill. 3. If the previous Grand Elder and Master of the Yunshao sect had remained in the sect and resisted to the end, with their rich legacy, even Yi Qingtang would take some time to completely eradicate the Yunshao sect. She certainly would not have been able to uproot it so easily. Eldest young lady, I must say that the Yunshao sect legacy is pretty good. They've put so much effort into managing it for hundreds of years, only for it to fall to our Yi family. Elder Bai Kuei laughed loudly. Yi Qingtang did not have much to say about that. A fight between two major forces was always like that. Once a battle began, the loser would always become fodder for the victor. Yi Qingtang quickly followed the Yi family branch masters and arrived in the area where the Yunshao sect reared its spirit animals. Dozens of spirit animals were separately reared in their individual areas. Their environment was almost like a paradise, extremely beautiful. Besides the rarer flying spirit animals, there were also fighting spirit animals and mounts. The Yunshao sect even reared many young demonic beasts. A super sect almost always gained its status from the efforts of its forebears. The rich legacy the sect had built up for hundreds of years was hard to imagine. Today, an ordinary sect would be hard-pressed to even provide fodder for these spirit animals and demonic beasts. However, to a super sect, it was nothing out of the ordinary and was not a burden. Yi Qingtang and the others very quickly came to the martial skills area. The Yunshao sect's martial skills area was not bad, but it was inferior to the one that Yi Qingtang had previously established in the Yi house. Not long after, Elder Bai Kuei, Daoist Zijin, Yi Qingtang, and the others came upon the treasure pavilion. "Greetings, young lord." A white-haired old man looked at Yi Qingtang, his face filled with respect. He kneeled and greeted them. This man was the guardian of the Yunshao sect's treasure pavilion and was very familiar with the treasures there. He sincerely begged Elder Bai Kuei and the others to allow him to remain, and he expressed his hope of serving the Yi family. Elder Bai Kuei allowed the old man to remain after receiving Yi Qingtang's approval. The old man was not part of the Yunshao sect's fighting force. His martial skills were ordinary, and he was only a part of the support personnel. The Yi family had retained many support personnel like him instead of expelling them from the sect. "No need to be so formal," said Yi Qingtang to the old man. The old man quickly stood up, looked at Yi Qingtang and smiled. "Young lord, please come this way." Yi Qingtang followed the old man into the treasure pavilion. The treasure pavilion in the Yunshao sect was divided into several large areas: the spirit weapons area, the Dharma treasures area, the talisman area, the traps area, the elixirs area, and so on. At that moment, Yi Qingtang and the others entered the spirit weapons area. In the center of it were rows of spirit weapons, and every one of them was of fairly high level. Young Lord, this cold earth sword is a medial black-grade spirit weapon. It belonged to the ancient Zhou kingdom's third emperor 300 years ago. The old man explained to Yi Qingtang and the others. Yi Qingtang nodded when she heard that. The old man knew every Dharma treasure like the back of his hand. They learned from the old man that the Yunshao sect's treasure pavilion was not open to ordinary disciples of the sect but only to those of warden level or above, who had made a major contribution to the sect. In the future, the treasure pavilion will be open to everyone in the Yi family, Yi Qingtang said to Elder Bai Kuei and the others. When they heard that, Bai Kuei and the Taoist Zijin nodded repeatedly. Chapter 1058 Trader 1. The senior members of the Yi family may pick any treasure from the treasure pavilion, with no conditions attached. If they are unsure of what to select, they can follow old Zhou's recommendations. Yi Qingtang looked at the old man. Young lord, please don't worry. I am very good with these matters, the old man said repeatedly. When they heard Yi Qingtang's words, the Yi family branch masters and two elders looked rather emotional. The Yunshao sect treasures were extremely attractive to them. After they left the treasure pavilion, Yi Qingtang's gaze swept across the air. Her lips immediately curved upwards and arched in a mysterious smile. Here was a fish that had escaped the net. Eldest young lady? Taoist Zijin was rather perplexed when he saw Yi Qingtang's odd expression. Come out! Yi Qingtang shouted coldly as her right arm reached into the void and grasped at something. As everyone stared, an old man in a black robe was dragged out of the void. Who are you? Elder Bai Kuei immediately shouted sternly. They had been completely unaware of this old man who was hiding in the void. Elder Chu, how are you? Yi Qingtang smiled coldly as she fixed her gaze on the old man, who was frowning deeply. Elder Chu was a Blood Moon sect elder, but after the sect was exterminated he moved to the Yunshao sect and taught the Yunshao sect disciples the evil skill of robbing others of their spirit roots. When Yi Qingtang had been in the Yunshao sect, she had followed her teacher, Elder Mo, and the others to the Drifting Cloud Island and coincidentally met Elder Chu and Yi Yu. She had learned of Elder Chu's status from the Blood Moon sect elder. Lord, Elder Chu stared at Yi Qingtang. This girl was so young but was already a young lord. 1,000 years ago, Elder Chu had also been a young lord. But unfortunately, 1,000 years later, his level of attainment had dropped too rapidly, and now he was only an ordinary Yin lord. I am willing to serve you faithfully, Elder Chu said to Yi Qingtang. Elder Chu firmly believed that given his value, this young lord would certainly give him an important position. However, Yi Qingtang just laughed coldly. I don't need your faithful service. But you may leave your life here. Elder Chu laughed when he heard Yi Qingtang's words. Young lord, I know the robbing spirit root skill. With me around, I can guarantee that the young lord's family will be elevated to the next level. When they heard that, all Yi family members present were taken aback and even somewhat skeptical. Robbing spirit root skill? Legend has it that one can indeed rob cultivators of their spirit roots and use them for oneself. Taoist Zijin was shocked. This secret skill had long been lost in this mainland. Elder Bai Kuei shouted angrily. Who would have thought that the Yunshao sect would be so despicable as to do such evil things? The robbing spirit root skill is equivalent to robbing others of their martial skills. It is a great crime. Elder Bai Kuei's fiancée had been snatched away by the Grand Elder of the Yunshao sect, so he had a deep hatred of stealing, even if it was in terms of martial skills. The skill of robbing spirit roots was somewhat similar to Yi Qingtang's heavenly demon devouring bloodline. However, when compared to the heavenly demon devouring bloodline, the robbing spirit root skill was inferior. The robbing spirit root skill could be used to devour the spirit root of others. However, the heavenly demon devouring skill could devour anything in the world, from the spirit energy of a stone to the martial skills and bloodline of a person. Robbing spirit root skill. Daoist Zijin thought for a moment and then suddenly frowned. Chapter 1059 Trader 2. 8,000 years ago, only the Blood Moon sect had this robbing spirit root skill. In that case, the black-robed old man before them was connected to the Blood Moon sect. Daoist Zijin did not care about even the three greatest powers, but the Blood Moon sect. 1,000 years ago, it was the foremost unshakable power in this mainland. Later, the Blood Moon sect had grown overly powerful, single-handedly beating all others. This had aroused the hatred of hundreds of sects and powerful families in this mainland. In the end, powerful sects and families had joined forces and had barely managed to exterminate the Blood Moon sect. But they paid a terrible price. The Blood Moon sect, at its peak, it had over 100 young lords. Even after the Blood Moon sect was exterminated, 1,000 years later, its senior members were slowly recovering, and the Blood Moon sect would rise again. If they killed a member of the Blood Moon sect today, the consequences would not be as simple as antagonizing the Biming manor. Young lord, I can use my robbing spirit root skill to serve you. Elder Chu fixed his gaze on Yi Qingtang. That sounds pretty good. A pity that I'm not very interested in your robbing spirit root skill. However, I am interested in taking your life. Yi Qingtang smiled coldly as she looked at Elder Chu. No matter what, she was the sworn sister of the Blood Moon Holy Lord. She even had the status of Blood Moon Holy Lady. As the Holy Lady of the Blood Moon sect, Yi Qingtang must certainly act now that she had met a great traitor of the Blood Moon sect. Otherwise, she could not answer to her handsome younger brother. Elder Chu was taken aback by Yi Qingtang's words. He had no quarrel with this young lord, so why was she so interested in taking his life? Eldest young lady, slow down. Let this man live for now. Daoist Zijin was afraid that Yi Qingtang would act immediately and spoke hurriedly. He mustn't be killed? Elder Bai Kuei looked at Daoist Zijin. He is a mere Yunshao sect elder, why can't he be killed? Daoist Zijin, can it be that you are interested in the robbing spirit root skill? Does our Yi family still need these things for embellishment? When he heard that, Daoist Zijin immediately shook his head and said, What rubbish robbing spirit root skill? Bai Kuei, are you brainless? Don't you know where the robbing spirit root skill originated from? When he heard Daoist Zijin's words, Elder Bai Kuei was shocked. The origin of the robbing spirit root skill. Bai Kuei immediately sank into deep thought. After a few breaths, his expression suddenly changed. As the Grand Imperial Sire of the formidable Heavens dynasty, Elder Bai Kuei could not possibly be unaware of the origins of the robbing spirit root skill. It was the Blood Moon sect, the foremost power 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, even the ancestors of the formidable Heavens dynasty had joined the plot to exterminate the Blood Moon sect. Only a senior member of the Blood Moon sect could use the robbing spirit root skill. Others could not possibly learn it. Are you saying that this man is a member of the Blood Moon sect? Elder Bai Kuei was shocked. In recent times, he had heard the news that the Blood Moon sect was reviving but had not taken it to heart. Eldest young lady, you must not kill this man, Elder Bai Kuei hurriedly said. He was suddenly on the same side as Daoist Zijin. Eldest young lady, you should be aware of the Blood Moon sect. It was the absolute power in this mainland 1,000 years ago. Although it was exterminated, it can revive. This man must have some deep connection with the Blood Moon sect. If he dies at the hands of our Yi family, we will offend the Blood Moon sect. Cold sweat seeped from Daoist Zijin's forehead. Chapter 1060 Trader 3. Although it had been exterminated 1,000 years ago, the reputation of the Blood Moon sect was still as formidable 1,000 years later. As the saying went, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Even the three biggest powers of today definitely did not dare to offend the Blood Moon sect. Unless all the sects and powerful families in this mainland allied again against a common enemy and completely eradicated the Blood Moon sect before it had a chance to revive fully. However, this was impossible. If the Blood Moon sect revived now, it would still be incredibly powerful. No one was willing to antagonize the Blood Moon sect. Further, the Blood Moon sect might not be powerful enough to gain dominance. If it did not impinge on anyone's interest, who would dare to stick their necks out first and take on the Blood Moon sect? Elder Bai Kuei and the Taoist Zijin did not want the Yi family to be the one to stick its neck out. The Yi family had just risen to power. If they offended the Blood Moon sect and was exterminated before they had achieved anything, that would be a pity. Now, Taoist Zijin and Elder Bai Kuei made up their minds that no matter what, they would not allow the eldest young lady to kill this Elder Chu. They really had the best intentions for the Yi family and eldest young lady. Even if Yi Qingtang was a young lord, no matter how powerful she was, she could not possibly oppose the Blood Moon sect. Eldest young lady, please reconsider. Eldest young lady, our Yi family cannot afford to offend the Blood Moon sect. Eldest young lady, right now, there is no need for our Yi family to offend the Blood Moon sect. A few Yi family branch masters also took the side of Elder Bai Kuei and Taoist Zijin and spoke up to persuade her. The members of the Yi family did not know Elder Chu's status and were ignorant of the fact that Elder Chu was a traitor to the Blood Moon sect. They simply thought that Elder Chu was a member of the Blood Moon sect. At that moment, Elder Chu's lips curved in a slight smile. He had thought of a way to extricate himself. So I have been discovered. I am one of the 24 elders of the Blood Moon sect. If you harm me at all, it will be equivalent to opposing my Blood Moon sect. Elder Chu swept a gaze across everyone and smiled coldly. All the Yi family members turned pale at Elder Chu's words. It did not matter whether he was speaking the truth. Even if he was lying, it was inconsequential. But if he was telling the truth and he really was one of the Blood Moon sect's 24 elders, their Yi family could not possibly bear the consequences. If the eldest young lady killed a Blood Moon sect elder, the Yi family would probably fall into an abyss from which there was no return. Even Yi Qingtang would probably suffer terrible consequences. Elder Chu, if you are really one of the Blood Moon sect's 24 elders, then I could bear witness for you. Yi Qingtang stared at Elder Chu and smiled coldly. However, you actually betrayed the Blood Moon sect and entered the Yunshao sect. I suppose you haven't forgotten about that. When they heard Yi Qingtang's words, Elder Bai Kuei, Taoist Zijin, and even all the Yi family branch masters were shocked. This Blood Moon sect elder was a traitor of the Blood Moon sect? Elder Chu snorted coldly. Nonsense. Although Elder Chu spoke with conviction, he was feeling rather guilty. How did this young lord know about these events? Elder Chu, do you recognize me? Yi Qingtang stared at Elder Chu. No. Elder Chu had already studied Yi Qingtang and found her unfamiliar. Since you don't recognize me, do you recognize this? Yi Qingtang pointed to her brow, her lips curving upwards. Chapter 1061 Traitor 4. Elder Chu was taken aback by Yi Qingtang's words. He did not understand her meaning but involuntarily glanced at her brow. The next moment, a thin blood-colored crescent moon surfaced on Yi Qingtang's brow. The singular blood moon aura filled the entire area. The blood moon aura, which was unique to the Blood Moon Holy Lady, gradually surfaced. Elder Chu was stunned for a few seconds when he saw the blood-colored crescent moon on Yi Qingtang's brow. When he snapped out of his trance, his lips moved a little, but he remained rooted to the spot. 1,000 years ago, Elder Chu had been a Blood Moon sect elder. He certainly recognized the mark of the Holy Lady of the Blood Moon sect. The girl standing before him had such a powerful Blood Moon aura. Holy Lady, impossible, that's impossible. Elder Chu could not believe it. Elder Chu was ashen. The young lord standing before him was the most mysterious Holy Lady of the Blood Moon sect, even more mysterious than the 2 Blood Moon Guardians, who had never been seen before. Also, the status of Blood Moon Holy Lady was even higher than that of the Blood Moon Sect Master, almost equal to that of the Blood Moon Holy Lord. When the Yi family branch masters, Taoist Zijin, and the others saw the Blood Moon mark on Yi Qingtang's brow, they were also stunned. However, when they learned from Elder Chu that their eldest young lady was actually the Blood Moon Sect Holy Lady, they were completely shocked. They stared at Yi Qingtang and almost forgot to breathe. Holy Lady, please have mercy. Great Holy Lady, please have mercy. With a thump, Elder Chu's body slumped, and he kneeled by Yi Qingtang's feet. Elder Chu, 1,000 years ago, you betrayed the Blood Moon sect. You collaborated with outsiders to kill numerous members of the Blood Moon sect. Now, I am going to show you grace and be merciful. Yi Qingtang fixed her gaze on Elder Chu and blandly spoke. Actually, Yi Qingtang did not really identify with her status as Blood Moon Holy Lady. However, the Blood Moon Holy Lord was her sworn brother and was loyal to her. Now that she had run into a traitor of the Blood Moon sect, she naturally needed to put the sect's affairs in order. Besides this connection, Elder Chu and the others in the Yunshao sect had also harmed many of the younger talented martial arts cultivators. Of course, it was none of Yi Qingtang's business as to who Elder Chu and the Yunshao sect had harmed, but the Xianling sect had almost been exterminated by the Yunshao sect, and this was closely related to Elder Chu. No matter what, Yi Qingtang would not allow him to leave. Kill him. Yi Qingtang looked at Bai Kuei and Daoist Zijin. Huh, what? Daoist Zijin was taken aback. When he recovered his wits, he still looked rather shocked. Eldest young holy lady, kill? Kill, repeated Yi Qingtang. I hate traitors the most. You Blood Moon sect traitor, you betrayed the Blood Moon sect and betrayed the Blood Moon Holy Lady. Your crimes are unforgivable. One of the Yi family branch masters stared at Elder Chu and shouted angrily. The next moment, Daoist Zijin, Bai Kuei, and a few Yi family branch masters advanced together and simultaneously struck a killing blow. Although Elder Chu had been a young lord 1,000 years ago, his current martial skills were merely around Yin-Yang perfected Lord Third Heaven. He could not possibly compare with Bai Kuei, Daoist Zijin, and others. Within the span of 10 breaths, the Yi family members had acted together to kill him. After Elder Chu was killed, the group from the Yi family stared at the blood-colored mark on Yi Qingtang's brow. They were all shaken. Besides being a young lord, their Yi family's eldest young lady was actually the Blood Moon sect Holy Lady. No wonder she had become a young lord at such a young age. No wonder she dared to challenge the Baiming Manor without fear. Chapter 1062 Shameless 1. Although the Yi family members were surprised, Yi Qingtang did not explain to them, and the branch masters and elders did not dare to ask further. After killing Elder Chu, Yi Qingtang bade farewell to the Yi family members and informed Elder Bai Kuei to bring Yi Ling and the other 3 elders of the Yi family to Yunshao sect. Afterward, she left the formidable Heavens dynasty and flew towards the Nine Knights dynasty. It had been a long time since she left Falling Sky Valley, and it was now time she settled the matters there. Currently, Falling Sky Valley had internal and external troubles. Not only did perfected Xianxin have to face the other peak masters, but he was even pressured by the Peerless School. Yi Qingtang's return to the Nine Knights dynasty was none other than to resolve Falling Sky Valley's conflict. In the sky, at the boundary of the formidable Heavens dynasty, Yi Qingtang slowed down instantly as she looked behind her. At this instant, 2 extremely powerful auras were flying towards her at lightning speed. After sensing these 2 powerful auras, Yi Qingtang inspected her back. In 2 breaths' time, these 2 auras were increasingly near, and 2 elderlies arrived at the spot in a flash. These 2 elderlies were similar in age. Looking at their outfits, they did not seem to be from sections. However, their auras resembled that of strong waves that swept across the surroundings. They were at least at the young lord level. Little girl, you run really fast. One of the white-robed elderlies sized up Yi Qingtang for a moment, and shock emerged in his eyes as he commented with a laugh. Yi Qingtang similarly sized up the 2 elderlies who suddenly arrived and blocked her way. With the cultivation base of a young lord and the fact that they appeared in the formidable Heavens dynasty, one did not need to think much to know that they were from Baiming Manor. May I know what you 2 stopped me for? Yi Qingtang looked at the 2 elderlies and said. After hearing Yi Qingtang, one of the elderlies said, Little child, I heard that you annihilated Yunshao sect. That's right, Yi Qingtang said bluntly without waiting for the elderly to continue. Both elderlies were slightly stunned when they heard Yi Qingtang admitting it so straightforwardly. Little girl, do you know that Yunshao sect is a super sect that is an affiliate of Baiming Manor? By annihilating Yunshao sect, it is equivalent to opposing Baiming Manor, The Baiming Manor elderly looked at Yi Qingtang and said with a smile. You two can just state your reason for being here. There's no need to beat around the bush, Yi Qingtang said. Ah, little girl, you're rather young, but you have quite a temper. Another elderly sneered. I have a deep-seated hatred with Yunshao sect. It is right that Yunshao sect is annihilated by me when its skills are lower than mine. Yet, you two are blocking my way and calling me arrogant, Yi Qingtang said. Oh. The Baiming Manor elderly snickered. In that case, Yunshao sect is rightly annihilated by you since its skills are lower than yours. So, is it right that you're killed by us if your skills are lower than us? If you all have the ability, why not give it a try? Yi Qingtang cast a look at the two people and said coldly. There's no hurry. Another elderly laughed. Little girl, you're so young, but you're already a young lord. Our Baiming Manor is one of the 3 mighty forces of this mainland. We pay great attention to powerful talents. Given your skills, you can completely join Baiming Manor, become an elder, and have the same status as us. How's that? Chapter 1063 Shameless 2. The 2 Baiming Manor elderlies were here for none other than Yi Qingtang, a young lord. Once Yi Qingtang left and was not within Baiming Manor's boundary of control or joined Peerless School or Phantom Valley, it was not a good thing to Baiming Manor. Although it was said that Baiming Manor could never accept another young lord in order to maintain the balance among the 3 mighty forces, they could not let the young lord end up in someone else's hands. They had to hold on to her first, and whatever they decided to do with her was something to be dealt with later on. Join Baiming Manor? Yi Qingtang shook her head. Not interested. Not interested? After they heard Yi Qingtang's words, a glint flashed across the Baiming Manor elderly's eyes. No matter whether this lady was uninterested in Baiming Manor or in the 3 mighty forces, both Baiming Manor elderlies did not dare to take this risk as the consequences would be dire should they not deal with this young lord. Not interested. Do you still want me to say it a 3rd time? Yi Qingtang said coldly. Yi Qingtang had lived for hundreds of years and was clearly aware of what Baiming Manor was thinking, which was merely to hold on to her. However, once she joined Baiming Manor, the consequences would then be truly dire. Little girl, do you really not want to reconsider? The Baiming Manor elderly stared at Yi Qingtang and asked with a frown. There's no need to reconsider. Yi Qingtang replied firmly. Upon hearing Yi Qingtang's reply, the 2 Baiming Manor elderlies exchanged a look. One of them nodded with a smile and said, All right. Baiming Manor has never forced people to do things against their will. Since you're unwilling, forget it then. However, if you are interested in the Baiming Manor in the future, you can head to Baiming Manor directly. Our doors will always be open for you. If that's the case, thanks a lot then, Yi Qingtang said. It was the best if the 2 Baiming Manor elderlies thought that way. However, Yi Qingtang snickered to herself. They spoke so nicely on the surface, but it was impossible for Yi Qingtang to not know exactly what those 2 were thinking. I'll take my leave then. Yi Qingtang cupped her fists towards the 2 Baiming Manor elderlies and subsequently turned around, wanting to leave. However, just as Yi Qingtang turned around, one of the Baiming Manor elderly's eyes twinkled. Horrifying killing intent exploded from him, and he dashed forward at top speed. He was so fast that one could only see the motion of the waves of air with the naked eye. A black mist that emerged from his palm subsequently aimed towards the back of Yi Qingtang's head. For a battle among young lords of similar cultivation realm, if one party was totally unguarded while the other launched a sneak attack, the one who sneaked an attack could very possibly kill the other with one strike at close distance. However, at this critical moment, Yi Qingtang scoffed. In a flash, she turned around and raised her palm to attack the Baiming Manor elderly. A deep rumble echoed around them immediately. As Yi Qingtang's palm slammed against the Baiming Manor elderly's palm, it was as though there was a thunderous explosion from the sky. After this strike, the 2 of them retreated several steps away from each other. Oh! The Baiming Manor elderly stared at Yi Qingtang and was taken aback. He previously saw that this young lord was young and judged that her experiences in the outside world should be rather little. As such, whatever he said earlier on was just to make Yi Qingtang lower her guard. Chapter 1064 Shameless 3. However, the Biming Manor elderly could not understand one point no matter how he thought about it. His words were flawless, and there was nothing to pick on, yet why was this lady already prepared for this attack? If Yi Qingtang was completely unprepared before and sensed it afterward, it was impossible for her to react so quickly, and she would have definitely been injured. However, that was not what happened. Biming Manor, one of the three mighty forces of this mainland. I never thought that the manor has such sly people. Yi Qingtang looked at the Biming Manor elderlies, and a cold glint emerged in her eyes. If she was not already on her guard earlier on, the consequences would be unthinkable. Once she was injured and the two young lords before her joined forces, they would be an extremely huge threat to her. Ah, little girl, you annihilated Yunshao sect and injured my Biming Manor envoy. You already have a death crime. If you join Biming Manor today, perhaps Biming Manor can still let bygones be bygones. However, you don't know what is good for you. Since that's the case, there's no need for you to leave here today. The Biming Manor elderly sneered, exposing his true nature. Even if I joined Biming Manor, I'm afraid that it does not have room for me either. By then, even if I died, I would most likely die mysteriously. Yi Qingtang snickered coldly. Oh, you even know about this too? The two Biming Manor elderlies were startled and were in disbelief. Given this girl's age, she could actually analyze all of that. Ah, little girl, it seems that you're not a brainless young lord. With things as such, there's no harm coming clean with you. Your guesses are indeed right. Currently, the three mighty forces are relatively balanced, and with you, a young lord, this balance will be destroyed no matter which side you join, and the side you join would definitely be jointly annihilated by the other two forces. Neither the Phantom Valley, Peerless School, or our Biming Manor wish to see such a situation happen. As long as you die, everyone will be happy, right? The Biming Manor elderly laughed. Yi Qingtang did not retort and nodded. What you said makes a lot of sense. However, the condition is that you all need to have the ability to do so. Humph, little girl, don't be so selfish. Even if it's for the balance of the three mighty forces, offering your life is worth it, a Biming Manor elderly said. It's a pity that the so-called three mighty forces that you all are talking about are nothing in my eyes, said Yi Qingtang. Huh, interesting. I just thought that your thinking is extremely mature. Now, it seems that that is not the case. After all, you're too young. Do you really believe that you are unparalleled now that you are a young lord? The Biming Manor elderly scoffed. Each of the three mighty forces of this mainland had 4 young lords. With a total of 12 young lords, what could Yi Qingtang, a mere itinerant cultivator, amount to? I don't dare to believe that I am unparalleled, but I should be skilled enough to deal with you too. Yi Qingtang had an indifferent expression. After hearing what Yi Qingtang had said, the Biming Manor elderly was infuriated. With death at hand, how dare you make such bold claims? Then, the Biming Manor elderly shot a look to the other elderly. That elderly then retrieved a scarlet ancient mirror from his space ring. As the scarlet ancient mirror appeared, a surge of olden air flooded out. Chapter 1065 Mirror of Illusions 1. A blood-colored light suddenly gushed out of the scarlet ancient mirror in the Biming Manor elderly's hand as though it was an everlasting aurora. Without giving Yi Qingtang any time to react, it instantly enshrouded Yi Qingtang in it. Sensing the aura of this blood-colored light, Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. This scarlet ancient mirror was a Dharma treasure exclusive to young lords. Its level was extremely high, and only young lords and those above the young lord realm could control and use it. Ah, little girl, this mirror is the captive sky mirror. Even a young lord will lose control of their body movement once they are caught in this mirror. The Biming Manor elderly who held the ancient mirror snickered as he looked at Yi Qingtang, who was sealed within the ancient mirror. No matter how powerful a young lord was, if they were unable to move and face 2 other young lords who were set out to kill, the only outcome was death. Yi Qingtang immediately activated the powers of the Heavenly Demon bloodline and executed the Heavenly Demon Devouring bloodline in the fastest time possible. The Devouring bloodline could devour everything in this world, including mental energy and physical energy. No matter what energy this Dharma treasure made use of, it was unable to withstand the strength of the heavenly demon devouring bloodline. As the devouring powers were executed, the blood-colored light from the ancient mirror was completely swallowed by Yi Qingtang's heavenly demon devouring bloodline in no time. Moreover, Yi Qingtang could clearly feel that the power in her body seemed to have increased a little, probably from devouring the ancient mirror energy earlier on. Although it was not obvious, she could still feel it. Noticing the situation, the two Baiming Manor elderlies were dumbstruck and could not comprehend the situation. This little girl must have a similar Dharma treasure to counter it. The elderly with the scarlet ancient mirror mumbled with a frown. Both Baiming Manor elderlies did not have much knowledge about the heavenly demon bloodline and thus were oblivious that Yi Qingtang used the heavenly demon devouring bloodline earlier on. A battle among young lords was not simple and took up a lot of time. As such, both young lords originally wanted to use the Dharma treasure to end the battle quickly, but they never thought that the captive sky mirror would have no effect on Yi Qingtang. Read more chapter on VIP novel. Since that's the case, we will join forces and use the secret sound sky spirit technique to kill this girl. The Baiming Manor elderly said. That's the only way. The other elderly nodded and immediately stored his scarlet ancient mirror. Then, both of them used their palms to form a print, and a massive primordial chi and mental energy instantly erupted. The secret sound sky spirit technique was one of the divine techniques of Baiming Manor. However, the conditions for executing this technique were extremely harsh and required young lords of at least Yin-Yang perfected Lord 7th Heaven to join forces in order for the technique to have an invincible might. It was difficult for even Yi Qingtang to defend against such a divine technique. The secret sound sky spirit technique mainly attacked one's mental state and was not considered a physical attack. Thus, there was no way to defend against it. This was also the frightening aspect of the technique. In an instant, an unusual sound that resembled a howl from hell rang around Yi Qingtang and caused goosebumps. It is not only your Baiming Manor that has Dharma treasures. Without hesitation, Yi Qingtang immediately retrieved an even plainer ancient mirror from her space ring. This ancient mirror was the Mirror of Illusions. It could only be used by the Phoenix bloodline and would materialize all attacking forces. Yi Qingtang obtained this Mirror of Illusions in the Dragon Vein as a gift from the Divine Phoenix after obtaining the Divine Phoenix inheritance. Chapter 1066 Mirror of Illusions 2. The two Baiming Manor elderlies did not recognize the Mirror of Illusions in Yi Qingtang's hand and were not affected by anything. Thus, they focused fully on the secret sound sky spirit technique. However, Yi Qingtang used the Mirror of Illusions at this instant. In the next second, all the unusual sounds actually turned into logs of wood. The logs fell from the sky and crashed onto the ground noisily. The scene that played out before their eyes left the two Baiming Manor elderlies completely dumbfounded and in disbelief. The secret sound sky spirit technique actually turned into logs of wood when shown on by Yi Qingtang's ancient mirror. How could this be? What is that Dharma treasure of yours? One of the Baiming Manor elderlies stared at Yi Qingtang and asked in disbelief. They had never heard of a Dharma treasure which could turn attacks into logs of wood. However, Yi Qingtang scoffed and did not utter a word. She immediately stored the Mirror of Illusions and turned into a flash of shadow as she leaped forward. Using her palm as a knife, she slashed down at one Baiming Manor elderly. Noticing the situation, the Baiming Manor elderly grunted in fury, immediately stepped forward, and entered a scuffle with Yi Qingtang. However, this person's martial skills were only at the late stage of Yin-Yang perfected Lord 7th Heaven and was not Yi Qingtang's opponent. Dozens of moves later, he was already in a disadvantageous position. Another Baiming Manor elderly joined in instantly. This person's martial realm was similar to that of Yi Qingtang's Yin-Yang perfected Lord 7th Heaven peak. However, even if the two Yin-Yang perfected Lord 7th Heaven late stage and peak cultivators joined forces, they were still on the losing ground and were simply not Yi Qingtang's opponent. How can this be? The two Baiming Manor elderlies were increasingly astonished as they fought. Although Yi Qingtang was at the peak of Yin-Yang perfected Lord 7th Heaven, her combat powers did not lose to an 8th Heaven cultivator and were even neck and neck with their Baiming Manor chief. Read more chapter on VIP novel. In no time, these two Biming Manor elderlies were severely injured. Should they continue the battle, it would not be of any threat to Yi Qingtang while they would be in a dangerous situation instead. Retreat first. The two Biming Manor elderlies exchanged a look, and one of them said with a frown. After fighting with Yi Qingtang for some time, both of them were fully aware that it was impossible for the two of them to be of any threat to Yi Qingtang in the current situation. They could only leave first and leave subsequent matters to be resolved by the manor chief. If the manor chief took action personally and came with their few young lords, this lady could be killed easily. Humph, little girl, your skills are indeed impressive. However, you have offended Biming Manor now, and there's no way out. We will not pursue you anymore today. The situation will change. The next time we meet, I will take your life. Afterward, the two Biming Manor elderlies turned into a flash of shadow and flew towards the sky. You come and go as you wish. Do you think it is that simple? If Biming Manor sent all its young lords and the Biming Manor chief, even Yi Qingtang would be unable to cope with that. It was best to kill these two young lords here right now. Swoosh! Yi Qingtang waved the regicide sky blade, and a scarlet sword gleam with an extremely intense power of the divine phoenix bloodline slashed the sky. Boom! One of the wounded young lords was caught off guard and fully bore Yi Qingtang's blow. Chapter 1067 Mirror of Illusions 3. The Biming Manor elderly was extremely pale from the blow and spat out blood as he fell from the sky to the ground. Realizing the situation, the other Biming Manor elderly was alarmed and did not dare to stop for a second. He sped up and flew with all his might, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Yi Qingtang did not continue to pursue that young lord who fled away and instead landed from the sky and stood before the heavily injured Biming Manor elderly. It was this person who spoke cleverly to make her put down her guard and then targeted her with a lethal strike. You! The Biming Manor elderly was as pale as a dead person as he watched Yi Qingtang warily. Never had he expected that this lattice combat power would be this large and powerful. The previous plan was for him and the other young lord to join forces. If they could convince Yi Qingtang to join Biming Manor, then they would leave it, but if they were unable to convince her, they had to kill her right there and then. Nonetheless, no one had expected that even when he joined forces with another young lord, in the end, they were also not Yi Qingtang's opponents and were defeated by her. One should not harbor any murderous thoughts. If careless, the one who dies will be yourself. Yi Qingtang looked at the heavily injured Biming Manor elderly and scoffed. You dare to kill me? The Biming Manor elderly's expression darkened. You and Biming Manor have not reached the irrevocable stage. If you kill me, Biming Manor will definitely be after your life in the future. Can you take on Biming Manor on your own? I don't want to have any relations with Biming Manor at all, but you all will not leave me alone. Since that's the case, don't blame me for putting up a strong resistance. As she spoke, she did not even give the Biming Manor elderly any reaction time and waved her regicide sky blade. In an instant, the regicide sky blade chopped the Biming Manor elderly's head, and a young lord of the Biming Manor died like that. Biming Manor's loss of a young lord was not as simple as just the death of a powerful figure. The three mighty forces of this mainland had 4 young lords each, and this resulted in a counterbalancing effect where no party could do anything to another. Nonetheless, now that Biming Manor lost a young lord and only had 3 young lords remaining, it would no longer be on the same level as Phantom Valley and Peerless School, and they were, at the very least, weaker than the other 2 great forces. If Phantom Valley and Peerless School learned of the death of this young lord, the consequences would be disastrous. Once one of the 3 mighty forces were weakened, it would definitely face the invasion of others. This was the law of the jungle and also an unchangeable fact of the struggle between forces. Yi Qingtang believed that Biming Manor would not have any time to deal with Phantom Valley and Peerless School, much less herself. She searched through the Biming Manor elderly's body and kept his space ring. Subsequently, she shot up into the sky and flew towards the Nine Knights dynasty. Given Yi Qingtang's current speed of a young lord, it merely took half a day for her to fly from the formidable Heavens dynasty to the Nine Knights dynasty. Apart from resolving the internal and external crisis of Falling Sky Valley, Yi Qingtang could perhaps spread the news that Baiming Manor lost a young lord to Phantom Valley and Peerless School. However, once Yi Qingtang returned to the Nine Knights dynasty, she would probably have some conflict with Peerless School to help Falling Sky Valley. Chapter 1068 Falling Sky Valley 1. Several Peerless School disciples returned to Falling Sky Valley again. Apart from demanding Falling Sky Valley to hand over perfected Xuanzhen's disciple, Yichen, they also requested an increment in the offerings to Peerless School. The Full Moon Peak Master, Shenyuan Yi, told the Peerless School disciples with a smile that Yi Chen is indeed not in Falling Sky Valley right now. Humph! We have already investigated it clearly. That fellow isn't even from the ancient clan and has an unknown origin. Injuring a Peerless School disciple is a crime punishable by death. We don't care where that fellow is right now. He is the disciple of your Falling Sky Valley Master, and we will only ask Falling Sky Valley for him, one of the Peerless School disciples said. Upon hearing that, Full Moon Peak Master Shenyuan Yi sized up Perfected Xianxin and snickered. Yi Chen was Perfected Xuanzhen's disciple, and Perfected Xianxin had to be the one who gave an explanation. What you all said is very true. Shenyuan Yi nodded and said. However, that Yi Chen is Perfected Xuanzhen's disciple. Valley Master will definitely give Peerless School an explanation for this matter. Please rest assured. Everyone's eyes landed on Perfected Xianxin successively. Perfected Xianxin, that Yi Chen is your disciple. You must hand over Yi Chen today, or you will bear the consequences yourself. The Peerless School warden looked at Perfected Xianxin and scoffed. Perfected Xianxin frowned deeply upon hearing that. Yi Chen had left Falling Sky Valley for a long time and never appeared since then. While Perfected Xianxin was unaware of Yi Chen's location, he would definitely not tell anyone Yi Chen's location even if he knew that Yi Chen was his disciple. To be honest, I don't know where my disrespectful disciple is at either. Thus, I am afraid I cannot do anything to help. However, the issue of increasing Falling Sky Valley's offerings to Peerless School can be considered. Perfected Xianxin looked at the Peerless School people and said, increasing the offerings is a must. However, Yi Chen must be handed over as well. This is Peerless School's orders and not a negotiation with your Falling Sky Valley. A Peerless School warden shouted coldly. Perfected Xianxin was extremely helpless but could not do anything either. At this instant, a Falling Sky Valley disciple came and greeted Perfected Xianxin with cupped fists. Valley Master. Full Moon Peak Master furrowed his brows and yelled furiously. Insolent! Don't you know how to look at the occasion? Peak Master? It's not. The Falling Sky Valley disciple said hurriedly. A powerful figure is here to pay Falling Sky Valley a visit. Powerful figure? Everyone was stunned to hear what this Falling Sky Valley disciple had said. What kind of powerful figure is it for you to rush in here without permission so insolently? The Full Moon Peak Master questioned coldly. It's a young lord. The Falling Sky Valley disciple replied hastily. Everyone was taken by surprise. A young lord was visiting Falling Sky Valley? Young lord? Even Perfected Xianxin was filled with astonishment, much less Full Moon Peak Master. That's right, the Falling Sky Valley disciple said as he nodded repeatedly. The young lord is from Peerless School? The Peerless School warden asked after some thinking. A young lord in the Nine Knights dynasty could only be from Peerless School. I don't know about that. The Falling Sky Valley disciple shook his head. It was the first time in his life seeing a young lord. God knows if that young lord was from Peerless School. Chapter 1069 Falling Sky Valley 2. It must be my Peerless School's young lord, the Peerless School warden said with affirmation, though he was very confused as well. Why did their Peerless School's young lord suddenly come to Falling Sky Valley? Go. Let's welcome the young lord together, said the Peerless School warden. Then, everyone rose and walked out of Falling Sky Valley. Outside Falling Sky Valley, Yi Qingtang stood far away. Several Falling Sky Valley senior executives and disciples were already beside her, and their attitudes were extremely respectful. A young lord was an unparalleled powerful figure of this mainland, and a young lord's visit was a great honor to Falling Sky Valley. However, The Falling Sky Valley senior executives were extremely curious as to why a dignified young lord would be at Falling Sky Valley. A while later, Peerless School's warden and disciples, Perfected Xianxin, Full Moon Peak Master, and the rest walked over briskly. Everyone was surprised when they saw Yi Qingtang. No one had expected that not only was this young lord a lady, she was also so young. Looking from her appearance, she seemed to be in her teens only. Of course, regardless of her age, no one dared to belittle a young lord. The Peerless School warden sized up Yi Qingtang in surprise. This lady was not from their Peerless School but was indeed an authentic young lord. There was only a handful of young lords on this mainland, but why did a young lord suddenly appear out of nowhere? Greetings, young lord. Perfected Xianxin, Full Moon Peak Master, and the rest immediately bowed to Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang nodded. Dare I ask for your name and origin? The Peerless School warden asked. Who are you? Yi Qingtang looked at the Peerless School warden and said coldly, I am a warden of the Peerless School. The Peerless School warden said with a haughty expression, Get lost. Yi Qingtang shot him a cold look and said rather impatiently with a frown, You. The Peerless School warden was instantly enraged after hearing Yi Qingtang. He was a warden of Peerless School and represented the entire Peerless School when outside, yet this lady dared to tell him to get lost. So what if she was a young lord? Their Peerless School had 4 young lords. Young lord, this is a Peerless School envoy. I believe you aren't foreign with the Peerless School. There are 4 young lords in the Peerless School. Full Moon Peak Master, Xinyuan Yi, looked at Yi Qingtang and said, What are you? Yi Qingtang's eyes landed on Xinyuan Yi. Yi Qingtang clearly remembered that before she left Falling Sky Valley, Xinyuan Yi was after her life. Now that she was back, she had to settle this score with Xinyuan Yi as well. Seeing that Yi Qingtang behaved this way, Full Moon Peak Master did not dare to utter another word. Given his cultivation realm, the young lord before him could easily take his life with just a thought if she wanted to. As such, Xinyuan Yi did not dare to continue speaking. Xinyuan Yi looked at Yi Qingtang discreetly, and his brows were deeply furrowed. For some reason, he felt that this unrivaled young lord before him was a little familiar looking, as though he had seen her somewhere before, but he could not recall where. Young lord, may I know if you have any instructions for gracing Falling Sky Valley with your presence? Perfected Xianxin looked at Yi Qingtang and asked. I passed by coincidentally and wanted to take a look at Falling Sky Valley, Yi Qingtang said. Chapter 1070 Casual Stroll. Perfected Xianxin was doubtful but did not dare to speak as he wished when just inches away from an unparalleled young lord. Since that's the case, please enter Falling Sky Valley, young lord. Perfected Xianxin immediately took a small step back and gestured to Yi Qingtang politely. Yi Qingtang did not say a word and entered Falling Sky Valley. After knowing that a young lord appeared in Falling Sky Valley, both Peak Masters of Watercut Peak and Blue Cloud Peak showed up. However, Yi Qingtang only talked to Perfected Xianxin and did not really bother with the other Peak Masters. At this instant, Perfected Xianxin was walking in the lead while everyone else was beside Yi Qingtang and did not dare to say anything. No one was clear of this young lord's intentions for coming to Falling Sky Valley, and Perfected Xianxin could only be extremely cautious. However, the Peerless School warden and the other 3 Peak Masters were rather impatient, especially the Peerless School warden. Outside, he represented Peerless School, but the person who accompanied the foreign young lord was not them. What was this? The Peerless School warden sized up Yi Qingtang. She was extremely foreign and was not a young lord from Peerless School, Phantom Valley, or Biming Manor. Everyone, we are not yet done settling our matters today. Very quickly, the Peerless School warden swept a look across Perfected Xianxin and the rest. Perfected Xianxin frowned deeply. He looked at the young lord before him and said apologetically, Young lord, we still have some matters to discuss. If you have time, how about staying in Falling Sky Valley for 2 days? Upon hearing that, Yi Qingtang sneered on the inside but maintained an indifferent expression. Don't bother with me. You all can just discuss your matters. Perfected Xianxin nodded. After giving Yen Shu instructions, Perfected Xianxin returned to the main hall with the Peerless School envoy. Currently, Yen Shu was accompanying Yi Qingtang cautiously. This was also Yen Shu's first time seeing and standing so close to a young lord. "You are Yen Shu." Yi Qingtang's eyes landed on Yen Shu as she commented softly. "Young lord, I am indeed Yen Shu." Yen Shu did not dare to look Yi Qingtang in the eye, thus, he lowered his head and replied respectfully. "I am talking to you. Why are you not looking at me?" When Yi Qingtang saw the usually serious Yen Shu's current behavior, she could not help but laugh in her heart. Upon hearing that, Yen Shu was startled and hurriedly looked up at Yi Qingtang. Their eyes met. When Yen Shu looked at the almost perfect face that was inches away from him, his heart skipped a beat. Not only was this young lord young, but her appearance was also truly extraordinary, like that of an otherworldly fairy. "Bring me around the valley," Yi Qingtang looked at Yen Shu and said. Noted, Yen Shu walked at the front and brought Yi Qingtang around the valley. Sometime later, the two of them arrived at a training field and saw a few disciples exchanging blows. Just as Yi Qingtang stopped in her tracks, she suddenly heard a loud rumble. A flashing shadow of a male shot towards her like an arrow. With sharp eyes and agile hands, Yi Qingtang immediately caught that figure. Looking at the enraged male before her, Yi Qingtang recognized that this person was none other than her master's disciple, Jixuan. "Thank you, junior sister." Jixuan was boiling with anger when he took a look at Yi Qingtang and actually did not recognize Yi Qingtang at once. Although Jixuan had seen Yi Qingtang's female appearance before, a lot of time had passed since then. Chapter 1071. Falsely accused of a capital offense. When Jixuan was in the formidable Heavens dynasty, Yi Qingtang had rescued him from the hands of the Yunshao sect disciples. So, of course, Jixuan had seen her real face. However, some time had passed, and it was natural for Jixuan not to recognize her immediately. Presumably, Yen Shu had taken Yi Qingtang for an ordinary Falling Sky Valley disciple. But at that moment, Yen Shu was frowning deeply. This Jixuan was actually addressing a young lord as his junior sister? Did he have a death wish? "Ah, Jixuan, you are so weak even though you are the Valley Master's disciple. I can see that most of perfected Zuanshan's sect is useless." Before Yen Shu could open his mouth to remind him to maintain the act, a white-robed man suddenly stared at Jixuan and laughed coldly. "Xinyuan Lai, you are spouting nonsense." Jixuan shouted in anger. The person who had just spoken was Xinyuan Lai, the grandson of the Full Moon Peak Master, Xinyuan. When Yi Qingtang left the Falling Sky Valley, she planned to head to the Dragon Vein. Xinyuan Lai had left the valley to block her way and kill her but was defeated by Yi Qingtang. After that, Xinyuan Yi had arrived in time to pursue Yi Qingtang, intending to kill her. Yi Qingtang still remembered these past hostilities. Naturally, her present return to the Falling Sky Valley was to call in her debts. "Humph!" Xinyuan Lai immediately shouted coldly. "Jixuan, you stole the Full Moon Sutra from the Full Moon Peak. That is a capital offense." "Xinyuan Lai, you framed me." Jixuan bellowed coldly. "What a joke! Our Full Moon Peak's Full Moon Sutra was found on your person. How dare you argue against such compelling evidence? Clearly, perfected Zuanshan's disciples are all like that." Xinyuan Lai laughed coldly. Yen Shu could not help but frown at the scene before him. He immediately smiled at Yi Qingtang apologetically. He advanced to face Jixuan and asked, "Yixuan, what's going on?" This Xinyuan Lai took the Full Moon Peak's Full Moon Sutra under the guise of wanting to spar with me. He doctored the Full Moon Sutra and then secretly hid it on my person, but he said that I stole the Full Moon Peak's Full Moon Sutra. Jixuan said to Yen Shu. When he heard Ji Yixuan's words, Yen Shu looked at Xinyuan Lai meaningfully. Full Moon Peaks was growing stronger, and it had asked Master Perfected Xianxin to give up his position as Valley Master. In addition, Watercut Peak and Blue Cloud Peak had declared that they would be on the side of Full Moon Peak. During the past few days, Xinyuan Lai had been going around provoking Full Moon Peak members and had become increasingly unrestrained. But they had not imagined that he would frame someone. Stealing a sutra was a capital offense. Even though he was the Valley Master, Perfected Xianxin could not protect Yixuan unless the latter could produce evidence. In addition, the Full Moon Sutra was indeed found on Ji Yixuan's person. Everyone had seen it, and there was no way he could deny it. Yishuan, do you have any evidence that Xianyuan Lai framed you? Yen Shu looked at Jishuan and frowned as he spoke. If Jishuan could produce evidence, he would be saved, and he could also denounce Xianyuan Lai for defamation. Yen Shu, I have no evidence, Jishuan shook his head. Although he knew what had happened, he could not prove that Xianyuan Lai had framed him. Xianyuan Lai had certainly planned this for a long time. He would not be caught out on any of the details. Yen Shu, this beast, has been provoking our kin and now has framed me. Clearly, he has ambitions regarding Full Moon Peak and is about to act. Jishuan said hastily. Was anyone unaware of his ambitions towards Full Moon Peak? Chapter 1072 The death penalty is inevitable. Yishuan, don't talk nonsense. Yen Shu glanced at Jishuan. Although everyone was aware of these matters, it was better not to say them out loud, especially in public. Jishuan, I think you are just spouting nonsense because you know you have committed a capital offense and cannot avoid death. Xianyuan Lai laughed coldly. He then faced a few justice wardens who were standing nearby, cupped his fists, and said smilingly, Lords, there is irrefutable evidence that Jishuan stole my Full Moon Peak's Full Moon Sutra and committed a capital offense. With that, a warden of the Hall of Justice nodded and said, We already know that. We have come today to capture Jishuan and bring him back to the Hall of Justice for questioning. When he heard that, Xianyuan Lai's lips curved upwards and arched in a cold, mysterious smile. But Yen Shu frowned deeply. Ordinary people could not enter the Hall of Justice. Even if they were innocent, they would certainly lose a layer of skin after entering the Hall of Justice. Now, the Hall of Justice was under the Full Moon Peak's jurisdiction. If Jishuan was really brought into the Hall of Justice, the consequences would be dire. Jishuan would probably cease to exist within the Falling Sky Valley. Wardens, this matter is too important. With that, Yen Shu looked at the justice wardens and spoke. When he heard that, a justice warden said coldly, You are right. Stealing the most precious treasure of the Full Moon Peak, the Full Moon Sutra, is indeed important. Wardens, the truth of this matter is unclear. Even if Jishuan really stole the Full Moon Sutra, he is still the Valley Master's disciple. The Valley Master is discussing important matters with the Lord of the Peerless School. If we really want to deal with this matter, we need to wait for the Valley Master to have time to attend to it personally, Yen Shu said. After he heard Yen Shu's words, one of the justice wardens laughed coldly and disdainfully. Even if a prince commits a crime, he should be punished in the same way as a commoner. In any case, Jishuan is only a disciple of the Valley Master. Even if the Valley Master were to come here personally, it would be of no use. This, Yen Shu sank into silence. It looked as if the Hall of Justice had indeed sought refuge with the Full Moon Peak. Otherwise, they would not deal with such an important matter so casually. In addition, Xianyuan Lai's words were full of loopholes. Jishuan was the Valley Master's disciple and had even more profound sutras that he could study. Why would he seek out something inferior and even risk his life to steal the Full Moon Peak's Full Moon Sutra? It did not make any sense. At that moment, the wardens of the Hall of Justice did not care about these loopholes at all. They only wanted to swiftly convict Jishuan. As to what they were thinking, only they themselves knew. Stop talking nonsense. A warden of the Hall of Justice shouted coldly. Jishuan, you have committed a heinous crime in stealing the most precious treasure of the Full Moon Peak, the Full Moon Sutra. Based on the rules of the Falling Sky Valley, if anyone steals a peak's item, they have committed a grave offense. To steal a peak's secret sutra is a capital offense. Now you have been caught red-handed. Do you plead guilty? Plead guilty? A bone-chilling laugh came from Jishuan. I, Jishuan, have been honest and above board my whole life. My conscience is clear. If you want my life, you can have it. If you try to falsely accuse me and shame my master's reputation, then you can dream on. What a joke. The Full Moon Sutra that the Full Moon Peak lost was found on your person. Everyone saw it, and it cannot possibly be false evidence. Even if you deny it 100 times over, it will still be useless. Jishuan, you better give yourself up. If you resist, you will suffer the consequences. The warden of the Hall of Justice shouted coldly. Chapter 1073 In Deep Trouble to the Hall of Justice. It was not important whether Ji Yixuan had really stolen the Full Moon Sutra. What was important was that Ji Yixuan was related to the Valley Master and that they were part of the Full Moon Peak. Clink. Ji Yixuan suddenly drew the sword at his waist. Are you really going to resist? When they saw that, the wardens of the Hall of Justice and Xian Yuanlai laughed coldly. If Ji Yixuan resisted, they could kill him on the spot. Then, the Valley Master, perfected Xianxun, would not be able to retain his position for much longer. Yan Shu. Ji Yixuan looked at Yan Shu. Tell my master that I, Ji Yixuan, have been honest and above board all my life. I have never done anything deceitful. Today I, Ji Yixuan, have been maligned by the Full Moon Peak. This incident is merely a ruse by the Full Moon Peak in its bid for power. Ask my master to be careful. I will leave first. As he said that, Ji Yixuan brandished his sword upward. His face was filled with determination. He would use his death to prove his innocence. He would not allow perfected Xianxun and the others to be besmirched in any way by him. What? When he saw what was happening, Yan Shu's expression changed. Ji Yixuan's long sword was already at his neck. He was too fast, and although Yan Shu tried to stop him, it was too late. However, at that moment, Yi Qingtang flicked her wrist. No one saw what Yi Qingtang did, but the long sword in Ji Yixuan's hand was instantly struck to the ground. Junior sister, Ji Yixuan looked at Yi Qingtang in shock. He did not know why Yi Qingtang had stopped him. Yi Qingtang looked at Ji Yixuan, who had resolved to die. She could not help but sigh inwardly. This senior brother Ji was too straightforward. Yi Qingtang laughed softly. If you didn't do it, why use your death to prove it? It's not worth it. Yan Shu was also shocked. He had not thought that this young lord would act in time to rescue Ji Yixuan. How dare you? At that moment, a warden of the Hall of Justice glared at Yi Qingtang in rage. Who are you to impede the Hall of Justice? When he saw what was happening, Yan Shu wanted to speak out and stop them. But he thought for a moment and remained silent in the end. At that moment, Yi Qingtang was looking at the warden. Her eyes were expressionless. Are you talking to me? Bring both Ji Yixuan and this girl back to the Hall of Justice. Now, I suspect that the two of them were in cahoots to steal the Full Moon Peak's Full Moon Sutra. The warden of the Hall of Justice shouted coldly. When she heard that, Yi Qingtang smiled and nodded slightly. I never thought that in this day and age, there is still someone who dares to speak to a lord like that. Yi Qingtang's words surprised everyone. Who did this girl think she was to call herself a lord? Only a yin-yang perfected lord could be called a lord. The next moment, the force of a young lord shot skyward. In an instant, it shrouded the entire falling sky valley. It was as if a lord demon from hell had descended. A blood-colored light flashed through the entire void. Under the supreme force of a young lord, everyone present started to shudder violently as their pupils constricted. At that moment, the Full Moon Peak's Xian Yuan Yi, the various senior disciples, and the wardens of the Hall of Justice were completely stunned. They stared at Yi Qingtang in disbelief. Young lord? One of the wardens of the Hall of Justice felt that the earth had split and that the sky had fallen. It was like the end of the world. He had actually tried to capture young lord. No one had taken any notice of Yi Qingtang. They had just assumed that this girl was an ordinary disciple of the falling sky valley. However, at that moment, they all realized that this beautiful girl was an invincible young lord. Chapter 1074 Miss. At that moment, the wardens of the Hall of Justice in the falling sky valley were all stunned. They stared at Yi Qingtang in disbelief. Why would a formidable young lord, who was invincible in this mainland, appear in their falling sky valley? Yi Qingtang's bland gaze passed over the wardens of the Hall of Justice. Without another word, she struck out with her palm. The power of a young lord instantly filled the entire area. The bodies of the wardens of the Hall of Justice instantly transformed into mists of blood and vanished from this earth. Everyone was shocked and struck dumb when they saw a young lord strike and swiftly kill the wardens of the Hall of Justice. The next second, Yi Qingtang's gaze fell on Xian Yuanlai. This person had tried to kill her outside the falling sky valley. Now that Yi Qingtang had returned, She certainly would not let him off. With just one look, Shen Yuanlai's eyes, ears, and nose started to bleed. Under the oppression of Yi Qingtang's Yang Lord force, he died almost instantly. This, Ji Xuan looked at Yi Qingtang in shock. His lips moved slightly as if he had forgotten how to think. Even Yan Shu had not expected Yi Qingtang to kill so decisively. Even Shen Yuanlai had not been able to escape. "Greetings, Yang Lord. I did not recognize the Yang Lord just now. Please forgive me," Ji Xuan bowed to Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang looked at the Ji Xuan, who was terrified and trembling. She gestured at him so that he would not stand on ceremony. By her reckoning, Yi Qingtang had already saved Ji Xuan twice, including the time in the formidable Heavens dynasty. Truly, she and Ji Xuan were fated. At that moment, Ji Xuan was studying Yi Qingtang closely. However, upon closer inspection, Ji Xuan's expression became increasingly peculiar. What? Did this Yang Lord seem so familiar? He felt that he had seen her somewhere before. Ji Xuan involuntarily searched his mind, and after a moment, he suddenly seemed to recall something. His pupils constricted violently. "You're Miss Yi?" Yi Qingtang could not help but laugh softly when she saw sudden realization dawn on Ji Xuan. He finally remembered who she was. Yan Shu's expression was rather strange as he watched the scene between Ji Xuan and Yi Qingtang. Could it be that Ji Xuan knew this Yang Lord? Although Yi Qingtang did not admit it, her smile clearly showed that Ji Xuan's guess was correct. Ji Xuan was highly agitated and could not calm down. In the formidable Heavens dynasty, Yi Qingtang had rescued him from the hands of the Yunshao sect master's disciples. Ji Xuan remembered that Yi Qingtang was an ordinary disciple of a sect named Shenling sect in the formidable Heavens dynasty. Within the short span of half a year, she had appeared again as an invincible Yang Lord. "I have some matters to discuss with perfected Shenshen, so I shall bid you farewell." Yi Qingtang looked at Yan Shu and Ji Xuan. With that, she vanished on the spot. At that moment, in the Great Hall, perfected Shenshen was facing pressure from the Full Moon Peak Master and the other two major Peak Masters. He was enraged but helpless. "Perfected Shenshen, as Valley Master of Falling Sky Valley, you have allowed your disciple to act wildly and offended the disciples of the Peerless School. This matter is closely related to you. Now, you should hand Yichen over or give up your position as Valley Master." Full Moon Peak Master, Xinyuan Yi looked at the silent perfected Shenshen and spoke coldly. The masters of the other two major peaks, Cutwater Peak and Blue Cloud Peak, immediately spoke up to agree. Perfected Shenshen, I can tell that you have reached the end of your time as Valley Master of Falling Sky Valley. Within 3 days, you must hand Yichen over to the Peerless School, otherwise, you will be responsible for the consequences." The warden of the Peerless School shouted coldly. "What arrogance!" A cold shout suddenly reached everyone's ears. The next second, Yi Qingtang entered and swiftly stepped into the Great Hall. When they saw Yi Qingtang's sudden arrival, the three major Peak Masters and the warden of the Peerless School all frowned. Why was this Yang Lord everywhere? These were the internal affairs of the Falling Sky Valley. What business was it of hers? Chapter 1075 Yichen. I'm afraid this is none of your business. The warden of the Peerless School looked at Yi Qingtang somewhat impatiently. Really? The corners of Yi Qingtang's mouth curved up slightly. She shielded her face with her sleeve. Within the span of 10 breaths, her beautiful young girlish face quickly transformed into that of a handsome young man. And this young man was the Yi Chen that they were looking for just now. A half-smile hung on Yi Qingtang's lips. Her gaze passed over everyone as she said, Yi Chen, are you looking for me? Who? Are Yi Chen? Perfected Shenshen stared at his own disciple, completely shocked and somewhat disbelieving Yi Chen was actually a girl and a young lord. How was that possible? You are Yi Chen. The Full Moon Peak Master, Xinyuan Yi, looked at Yi Qingtang in shock and disbelief. Xinyuan Yi, your grandson Xinyuan Lai has already died. As a grandfather, aren't you afraid that your grandson will be lonely? Shouldn't you keep him company? Yi Qingtang lifted her eyes slightly and glanced at the Full Moon Peak Master, Xinyuan Yi, from the corners of her eyes. What did you say? Xinyuan Yi's expression was one of shock. Come here, Yi Qingtang exclaimed. A cold light suddenly flashed across Yi Qingtang's smiling eyes. Without giving Xin Yuan-yi a chance to open his mouth, she suddenly grasped his neck and choked him. At that moment, Xin Yuan-yi was in Yi Qingtang's grasp and was unable to struggle. His body left the ground as Yi Qingtang lifted him up into the air. Have mercy. Xin Yuan-yi's face was flushed as he stared at Yi Qingtang in terror. Mercy? When she heard Xin Yuan-yi's plea, the smile lurking at the corners of Yi Qingtang's mouth seemed to deepen. When she had left the falling sky valley earlier, Xin Yuan-yi had continually pursued her. Had he shown any sign of mercy? If you want mercy, you better ask for it in hell, Yi Qingtang said blandly. In the next second, there was a snap. Without giving Xin Yuan-yi a chance to speak, Yi Qingtang had swiftly twisted Xin Yuan-yi's neck. Yi Qingtang glanced at the lifeless Xin Yuan-yi and then casually threw the body at the feet of the warden from the Peerless School. The envoy from the Peerless School was both shocked and angry. He glared at Yi Qingtang. What's the matter? Doesn't your Peerless School want to capture and question me? Yi Qingtang looked at the Peerless School warden. I'm here now. Why don't you act? However, the Peerless School warden did not dare to say anything. He only clenched his fists, speechless. Their pride in being a warden of the Peerless School made them unable to humble themselves. Although the person before him had injured disciples of the Peerless School, she was also a genuine young lord. If they started a fight with a young lord as Yi Qingtang had suggested, their fate would probably be the same as that of the Full Moon Peak Master, Shen Yuan-yi. We represent the Peerless School. You previously injured some disciples of the Peerless School. You should give an account. The warden of the Peerless School looked at Yi Qingtang and said, An account? Yi Qingtang's gaze swept across the warden of the Peerless School. Her face showed no expression. I have already given you an account. I'm here now. You can act whenever you want. You. The Peerless School warden gritted his teeth in anger but was unable to argue. Yichen, it is true that you are a young lord. But you are not showing the Peerless School any respect at all. The Peerless School warden said. Chapter 1076. Am I afraid? Peerless School? When she heard that, Yi Qingtang's eyelids drooped. The corners of her mouth curved in a small smile. What about Peerless School? I don't even care about the formidable Heavens Dynasty's Baiming Manor. There are 2 Baiming Manor young lords out to kill me, but I have already killed one of them. I'm not even afraid of the Baiming Manor, so why should I be afraid of the Peerless School? You killed a young lord from the Baiming Manor? The Peerless School warden was taken aback by Yi Qingtang's words. In this mainland, the 3 biggest powers each had 4 young lords. This kept things in balance so that they were on equal footing. But if one of the powers lost a young lord, then the balance of power among the 3 would be lost. Either the Peerless School or the Phantom Valley could attack the power that had lost a young lord. The outcome of a fight between 4 young lords and 3 young lords could be imagined. I still have some internal matters to settle in the Falling Sky Valley today. I don't have time to bandy words with you. Scram. The warmth in Yi Qingtang's eyes had swiftly faded. The warden of the Peerless School just needed to bring back the news that the Baiming Manor had lost a young lord. Humph. The Peerless School warden scoffed coldly. He immediately rose and led the Peerless School disciples out of the Great Hall and into the Falling Sky Valley without a backward glance. As the Peerless School warden left, Yi Qingtang's gaze fell on the 2 peak masters of Cutwater Peak and Blue Cloud Peak. Heirs at that moment, the 2 peak masters were struck dumb. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. Who would have thought that perfected Xuanqin's disciple, Yichen, had now appeared in the Falling Sky Valley as a young lord? If they had known about this, they would never have dared to collude with Full Moon Peak. From now on, you are stripped of your positions as masters of Blue Cloud Peak and Cutwater Peak. You are expelled from Falling Sky Valley. Yi Qingtang looked at them and said calmly. Why? The 2 of them were shocked. Why? Yi Qingtang's expression seemed imbued with a trace of bone-chilling frost. Her gaze swept over them inch by inch. You colluded with the Full Moon Peak to do such underhanded things. Have you forgotten about them? You have better vanish forever from my sight before I change my mind. I won't repeat myself. When they heard Yi Qingtang's words, The Blue Cloud Peak and Cutwater Peak masters were so frightened that they were soaked in cold sweat. They did not dare to speak anymore and immediately got up. They only wished they had been born with a few more legs. They swiftly fled and vanished without a trace. It was all too easy for a young lord to kill martial cultivators of their level. With just a thought, they could be smashed into smithereens and transformed into nothingness. As she looked at the two of them flee, Yi Qingtang resumed her original appearance. She looked at the shocked perfected Xianxun, and the sharp look in her eyes completely faded and was replaced with gentle amusement. "Master, are you pleased with this conclusion? Are you, really Yi Qin?" Perfected Xianxun felt as if he was in a dream. He could not imagine how Yi Qin, who was clearly a male, could now become a female, especially one with terrifying powers of the cultivation of a young lord. "Master, I was originally a girl, but when I first came to Falling Sky Valley, I had no choice but to present myself to others as Yi Qin," explained Yi Qingtang. "I see." When Perfected Xianxun heard Yi Qingtang's explanation, he realized that Yi Qin was Yi Qingtang's false name. "So, what is your real name?" Perfected Xianxun asked Yi Qingtang. "Yi Qingtang." She answered honestly. Chapter 1077 The Old Valley Master, Ying. The girl who obtained the fiend's celestial beast cub in the hell of Avisnaraka? Perfected Xianxun was shocked. "Yes." Yi Qingtang nodded. "In that case, I understand." Perfected Xianxun nodded. Yi Qingtang had obtained a young fiend celestial beast in the hell of Avisnaraka. This news had spread throughout this mainland. If Yi Qingtang had not disguised herself and completely changed her appearance, she would not have lived until today. However, before Perfected Xianxun could continue speaking, exclamations could be heard from outside the Great Hall. Yi Qingtang and Perfected Xianxun immediately walked out of the Great Hall together. Outside the Great Hall stood a white-robed old man. On the ground lay dozens of corpses. One of the corpses was the peerless school warden. The peak masters of Cutwater Peak and Blue Cloud Peak were also there. Perfected Xianxun looked in surprise at the white-robed old man who was standing nearby. "Old Valley Master, you, Old Valley Master?" Yi Qingtang looked thoughtful when she heard Perfected Xuanxun's words. Previously, in the formidable Heavens Dynasty, it seemed that Jishuan was looking for the regeneration stone to allow the Old Valley Master to continue living, and the Old Valley Master had been seriously injured by the peerless school warden. Perfected Xianxun looked in shock at the old man who was standing nearby. Although the Old Valley Master had obtained the regeneration stone and managed to survive, he had not been able to recover from his severe injuries and had been recuperating behind closed doors. What had caused him to leave his seclusion to return to the Falling Sky Valley? "Old Valley Master, are you injuries better?" Perfected Xianxun asked the old man. When she saw that Perfected Xianxun was about to walk over to the old man, Yi Qingtang caught hold of him. This old man's aura was rather peculiar, and the bodies on the ground were inexplicable. Yi Qingtang looked at the Old Valley Master pointedly and said, "Old Valley Master, did you kill the peerless school warden and these other people?" "Old Valley Master killed them." One of the Falling Sky Valley disciples hurriedly nodded. The Old Valley Master looked at Yi Qingtang and studied her for a moment before a strange smile lit his face. "Peak of the seventh heaven of Yin Yang Perfected Lord. Not bad at all." After he had spoken, the old man ignored Yi Qingtang and the others. A pitch-black pearl surfaced on his brow. Under the glow from the black pearl on the old man's brow, the peerless school warden and the dozens of other corpses transformed into black mist and instantly rushed into the black pearl. When Perfected Xianxun saw the Old Valley Master's appearance, he was shocked and was somewhat disbelieving. The Old Valley Master looked like he had suffered from chi deviation during his recuperation or had cultivated some kind of sinister power. However, the Old Valley Master ignored Perfected Xianxun. He looked towards the void and sighed softly. Time is running out, time is running out?" Perfected Xianxun was taken aback when he heard that. He involuntarily asked, "In what way are you short of time?" Yi Qingtang followed the Old Valley Master's gaze, and after a moment, she also frowned slightly. The Old Valley Master was studying the area in which the dimension wall had been smashed, as if the Old Valley Master knew something. "You come here." The old Valley Master gestured slightly with his right arm. The peak masters of the other 12 peaks instantly had their necks broken by the old Valley Master. The next moment, the ground was littered with numerous corpses. Chapter 1078 The Conspiracy. Old Valley Master, what are you doing? Perfected Xianxun was completely dumbfounded upon witnessing the situation. His face was full of disbelief. The old Valley Master killed a few peak masters instantly. Master, don't go. Yi Qingtang stretched her hand out and pulled Perfected Xianxun back to prevent him from getting near the old Valley Master. Qingtang, did the old Valley Master enter the qi deviation during his treatment? Perfected Xianxun looked towards Yi Qingtang immediately. Yi Qingtang squinted her eyes and scanned through the elder in front of her. Yi Qingtang pulled back her sight and shook her head towards Perfected Xianxun. She frowned and said, Master, I don't think that the old Valley Master entered the qi deviation. When a cultivator entered the qi deviation, his own injuries would only get worse. However, based on the old Valley Master's current situation, he was full of energy and vitality with no trace of injury at all. Furthermore, if a cultivator entered the qi deviation, his martial ability would not increase exponentially. The aura that the old Valley Master revealed just now let Yi Qingtang feel threatened as well. According to her knowledge, the old Valley Master's martial ability was just a normal young lord at his peak time. Not the qi deviation. Perfected Xianxun was shocked. If it was not because of the qi deviation, what made the old Valley Master like that now? The few peak masters' corpses turned into a ball of black fog under the influence of the black pearl at his glabella and were absorbed by the pearl. This is weird. Why is the dimension wall broken? The old Valley Master murmured to himself after absorbing the bodies of the few peak master. The old Valley Master's murmur entered Yi Qingtang's ears. At the same time, a black glint radiated out from the old Valley Master's glabella and surrounded the Enter Nine Knights dynasty. It should be enough to use all living creatures in the Nine Knights dynasty as the price, the old Valley Master said softly. Everyone in the Falling Sky Valley froze on the spot and could not believe what was happening. The black light contained unimaginable power that could destroy everything. Come here. The old Valley Master looked at some senior members and disciples of the Falling Sky Valley and smiled. In the next second, everyone was killed with his invisible power. Stop! Perfected Xianxun shouted. The old Valley Master sized up Perfected Xianxun. Old Valley Master, what are you doing? Perfected Xuanxun's voice quivered. The old Valley Master laughed softly and said, Xianxun, you're my favorite person in the entire Falling Sky Valley. If not, I would not ask you to replace the position as the Valley Master back then. However, I'm back now, and you should die in honor. The old Valley Master lifted his arm and tried to grab Perfected Xianxun after he finished his words. Yi Qingtang immediately blocked Perfected Xianxun, and her divine power of a young lord exploded out from her body to suppress the old Valley Master's terrifying power. A young lord at such a young age. You are quite extraordinary, even at my age. However, you don't need to rush. It'll be your turn after I kill everyone else. The old Valley Master looked at Yi Qingtang and smiled. Your age. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly when she heard the old Valley Master's words. He was not as simple as how he appeared. Chapter 1079 10,000 Years, Old Valley Master of the Falling Sky Valley. What's the relationship between you and the extraordinary lady? Yi Qingtang stared at the old Valley Master and contemplated. The extraordinary lady? The old Valley Master was slightly stunned after hearing Yi Qingtang's words. The extraordinary lady who used her spiritual abode to create this mainland, Yi Qingtang said coldly. The old Valley Master was taken aback and stared at Yi Qingtang in surprise. After a while, the old Valley Master said, How did you know about that? You don't need to know about that. Yi Qingtang replied coldly. The old Valley Master's response proved that Yi Qingtang's guess was correct. The old Valley Master must be related to the extraordinary lady who created the mainland. You know quite a lot based on your age. The extraordinary lady you mentioned was regarded as a god by us. After she came to the mainland, she led us to the magnificent martial civilization. She used her own spiritual abode to create the land for us. The elder was immersed in deep thought as if he had returned to that age. However, things did not go well. Her divine power was used up as she lost her spiritual abode. However, without her divine power, she still enjoyed our worship and respect. She really treated herself as a god. How funny was that, huh? The old Valley Master's expression was getting a little insane. Wei Qingtang was slightly stunned after hearing his explanation. The extraordinary lady had passed away around 10,000 years ago. According to the old Valley Master's words, it seemed that he lived in the same age as the extraordinary lady and had even served her before. Perfected Xianchen and the rest all froze, stunned. None of them could understand the conversation between the old Valley Master and Yi Qingting. Who was the extraordinary lady? What spiritual abode, God were they talking about? Yi Qingtang looked at the old Valley Master coldly and said, the extraordinary lady had passed away for around 10,000 years. It seemed that you lived in the same age as her. Ha! Young girl, you're very clever. No wonder you can become a young lord at your age. I have lived for more than 10,000 years. I was the first sect master of Yunshao sect, and I created the Falling Sky Valley. I always change my identity every few hundred or thousand years. Yi Qingtang's expression changed slightly as well after the old Valley Master finished his words. The person in front of her really had lived for 10,000 years. What a pity, there isn't enough spirit energy on this mainland. Furthermore, the extraordinary lady you mentioned used her remaining divine power as a curse to build the dimension wall after she passed away. The dimension wall could shield any outsiders and also prevent us from leaving this mainland. If not, I believe some of us would have become emperor-level figures. The old Valley Master sighed softly and helplessly. Yi Qingtang did not know about the curse from the little white tiger. Even the little white tiger might not know about that. The old Valley Master was right. If it was not due to the power of the curse that prevented the group of ancient people from leaving the mainland, they all had the chance to become emperor-level figures after living for 10,000 years. How did you manage to live so long? Yi Qingtang frowned and asked. Chapter 1080 Eternity is Solitary 1. He had been living for more than 10,000 years. What kind of concept was that? Any cultivator who could live for 10,000 years could become an extremely powerful figure in the world. It was not impossible to even become an emperor-level figure. However, it was extremely difficult to live for 10,000 years. Yi Qingtang stared at the old Valley Master in front of her and could not figure out how he managed to live for so long. The old Valley Master heard the number and was embedded in memories. It seemed like he was trying to chase his past. 10,000 years, the old Valley Master sighed after a long while. I have lived for too long. I almost forget about it. The old Valley Master swept his eyes across Yi Qingtang. He shook his head slightly and sighed. And Zhu, the ancient people consumed the extraordinary lattice body parts after killing her. I ate her heart. And I have no idea why her heart can give me eternal life. The old Valley Master did not avoid talking about the things that happened 10,000 years ago. However, when he mentioned about consuming the body parts, an unusual look appeared in his eyes. I see. Yi Qingtang frowned. The extraordinary lady 10,000 years ago was really close to a god. No one would expect that her heart would give eternal life. However, the extraordinary lady was too merciful. If not, she would not end up with such a consequence. She sacrificed everything she had and nurtured a batch of ungrateful people. I have not been saying these things for a long period of time. Not many from my age are still alive now. The old Valley Master looked at Yi Qingtang and smiled as he shook his head. Yi Qingtang stared at the old Valley Master. She could feel a sense of sadness and hopelessness in his eyes when he talked about these things. However, the expression disappeared after a second. It was hard to catch that if she did not pay attention. Yi Qingtang understood the whole image from the old Valley Master's words. The old Valley Master of Falling Sky Valley should be an ancient person from 10,000 years ago. After killing the extraordinary lady, the old Valley Master ate her heart and had eternal life. However, the curse left by the extraordinary lady prevented the ancient people of that age from leaving this mainland. The only way to break the curse was to get the extraordinary lattice spiritual abode. If the old Valley Master got his hand on the spiritual abode, he could break the curse and leave the mainland. As long as he was able to leave the mainland, his power would increase exponentially with his 10,000 years of life. The old Valley Master looked around, and a trace of hesitation appeared in his eyes. However, the hesitation disappeared immediately. The old Valley Master raised his hand in the next second. A black glint exploded from the black pearl at his glabella and turned all corpses into black fog. Old Valley Master, what do you want? Perfected Xianxun stared at the old Valley Master and shouted. An ominous feeling arose in his heart. Chapter 1081 Eternity is Solitary. 2. I need to get the spiritual abode. If I want to leave the mainland. The old Valley Master stared at Perfected Xianxun without any emotion. He had to destroy this mainland in order to obtain the spiritual abode. He needed to start from the Nine Knights dynasty, to kill and destroy every living creature on this mainland. Based on the old Valley Master's martial ability, it was not difficult for him to do so. After thinking through what the old Valley Master was going to do, Yi Qingtang immediately jumped off the ground and pulled out the black-grade regicide sky blade. Her divine phoenix power exploded at the same time as well. A giant flame phoenix appeared by her back. A soft roar appeared, seeming to be able to make the world tremble. Swoosh! Yi Qingtang waved her regicide sky blade and slashed towards the old Valley Master. She did not care what thoughts the old Valley Master had. There were still her family and friends on this mainland. She would not allow anyone to destroy that. However, the old Valley Master stood there without any intention to dodge. Clink. Under everyone's gaze, the instant where Yi Qingtang slashed her sword down, the old Valley Master raised his right arm slightly. He used 2 fingers and caught Yi Qingtang's regicide sky blade. Yi Qingtang frowned as her sword was held by the old village master. A trace of surprise appeared in her eyes. An image of yin-yang intersecting with the sun and moon appeared behind the old Valley Master. A remote power that broke through the sky landed. Everyone in the falling sky valley froze on the spot. Yi Qingtang was astonished as she saw the yin-yang and the sun with the moon. Yin-yang Perfected Lord. 10th Heaven. Yi Qingtang widened her eyes and stared at the image behind the old Valley Master. As all had known, Yin-yang Perfected Lord was classified into 10 heavens. However, the 10th heaven had become a legend. It was extremely hard to find someone at the 9th heaven of Yin-yang Perfected Lord. After entering the 8th heaven of Yin-yang Perfected Lord level, one would encounter the bottleneck. It was rare to hear any cultivator that was able to enter the 9th heaven for the past thousands of years. Almost all cultivators started to charge towards arcane supremacy after reaching the 8th heaven of Yin-yang Perfected Lord. In Yi Qingtang's previous life, after reaching the peak of the 8th heaven, she wanted to explore the legendary level and charge towards the 9th heaven. However, she found no clue in the next 3 years. It seemed that there were no 9th and 10th heaven at all. Yi Qingtang could not help but break through the 8th heaven and enter the arcane supremacy. After living for 2 lives, this was the first time she saw the legendary 10th heaven of Yin-yang Perfected Lord. Indeed, you're very talented. A young lord at such a young age. The old Valley Master looked up at Yi Qingtang and murmured, "You remind me of my disciple." The little guy was only 8 or 9 years old, and he was a heavenly venerate. The old Valley Master frowned as he recalled something. Heavenly venerate? His disciple? Yi Qingtang looked at the old Valley Master in shock. Before she could say anything, the old Valley Master lifted his right arm. Yi Qingtang was then thrown out by a powerful and ineffable force. Chapter 1082 Eternity is Solitary. 3. There is no time left, the old Valley Master sighed softly. The black pearl at his glabella flew towards the sky. Almost instantly, a black fog exploded and surrounded the entire Nine Knights dynasty in darkness. Yi Qingtang steadied herself. She stared at the old Valley Master and asked, "You killed a selfless lady for your own greed. Now, you want to use all living creatures' lives on the mainland as your stepping stone to break the curse." Yi Qingtang would not call herself a kind person. However, she could not accept the fact that he was going to kill everyone. After hearing Yi Qingtang's words, The old Valley Master remained silent. After a while, he raised his head and looked at Yi Qingtang. I have given too much time to this mainland. However, the dimension wall is broken. I believe that there will be a lot of powerful people coming from elsewhere soon to take the spiritual abode. Why not just give it to me? Yi Qingtang stared at the old Valley Master, who seemed to be very determined. There was no trace of hesitation. No matter how he tried to explain himself, he could never erase the crimes he had committed due to his selfishness. When the snow fell, the Divine King appeared. When he raised his head, he saw the most beautiful spirit. However, time flies, and hair whitened almost instantly. The old Valley Master sighed with a complex expression. The old Valley Master's sigh and murmur landed into Yi Qingtang's ears. She was slightly stunned. Divine King Luo Shui. Before the mainland was formed 10,000 years ago, there was a hero appeared after a snowstorm. He was known as the Divine King Luo Shui. The Divine King Luo Shui led ancient people to form tribes and battled everywhere. His story was written in an enclosed historical record. Your Divine King Luo Shui. Yi Qingtang stared at the old Valley Master in surprise. The old Valley Master's body trembled slightly. His subtle reaction was all captured by Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang felt a mixed chain of emotions. If her assumption was correct, the old Valley Master was the Divine King Luo Shui from 10,000 years ago. According to the legend, Divine King Luo Shui lived together with a demon 10,000 years ago. In one battle against a strong enemy, he lost, and he used his life to cover for the demon for it to escape. However, the demon was not willing to leave and was willing to die together with him. The Divine King Luo Shui in the legend cared for everything, even for a demon. Yi Qingtang could not believe that the person in front of her who betrayed the extraordinary lady, ate her heart, and wished to kill everyone here as his stepping stone would be the Divine King Luo Shui in the legends, the one that was so selfless and kind. Either the Divine King Luo Shui was lying, or the historical record was wrong. However, Yi Qingtang was not sure of the truth. Boom! Suddenly, the sky was covered with dark clouds. Blood-red streaks of lightning appeared in the clouds and were about to attack everyone like a beast. Swoosh! In the next second, the blood-red streaks of lightning struck towards the old Valley Master from mid-air. Yi Qingtang was shocked. The blood-red streaks of lightning contained enormous power of the sky. Yi Qingtang could still remember how she encountered the heavenly tribulation when she was about to charge towards the holy venerate. She almost died under the heavenly tribulation. Eventually, she managed to avoid the heavenly tribulation and became a holy venerate. Chapter 1083 Divine King Luo Shui 1. The old Valley Master did not have any signs of advancing, but why was there a blood-colored heavenly tribulation falling from the sky? Ha ha. Although there were blood-colored streaks of lightning raining down, the old Valley Master was laughing heartily. With one hand controlling heaven and earth and the other controlling the sun and the moon, he received the streaks of lightning like a true god without any trace of fear. Yi Qingtang was taken aback by the sight. Who in this world could face the heavenly tribulation with smiles? It was most likely only Divine King Luo Shui. Clink. A black saber appeared in Divine King Luo Shui's hand. Old friend, it's been long. The old Valley Master looked at the black saber in his hand and chuckled. Before everyone's shocked eyes, a clear voice sounded from the black saber. Divine King Luo Shui, I have been sealed by you for thousands of years. I never thought that you would actually bring me out today. Ha! Meeting an old friend again. How great! The old Valley Master laughed. The smile on his face completely contrasted that of a serious character. The heavenly tribulation is here. Fight! The saber shouted. In the next second, the old Valley Master rushed to the sky, and the saber swept across the blood-colored streaks of lightning. Boom! Boom! There was a loud eruption when the black saber faced the heavenly tribulation as though the sky was about to explode. Regicide Sky Blade? Yi Qingtang stared at the sword in the old Valley Master's hand, and her pupils dilated slightly. The long sword in the old Valley Master's hand was actually the genuine Regicide Sky Blade. Although Yi Qingtang's black-grade weapon was also named the Regicide Sky Blade, it was an imitation of the heaven-level divine weapon, Regicide Skyblade. The weapon in Divine King Luo Shue's hand was the true heaven-level divine weapon. Regicide Skyblade. At this instant, Yi Qingtang did not even have time to think. The Regicide Skyblade smashed the blood-colored streaks of lightning violently, and the might of the heavenly tribulation swept throughout the place as though it wanted to extinguish every being in the world. Very quickly, the first heavenly tribulation was broken through. Divine King Luo Shue's heaven-level divine weapon pointed to the sky proudly as though it had returned to millions of years ago, an era which it belonged to. Old friend, the clear spirit from the Regicide Skyblade sounded. The road that you chose. Isn't the price a little too huge? Price? Divine King Luo Shue was expressionless, and he seemed to be in thought. After so many years, he had almost forgotten his initial thinking and who he exactly was. I don't wish to become eternal, Divine King Luo Shue mumbled. Eternity is lonely. This road is too difficult. If you really swallowed her heart back then, would you still need to be afraid of the curse? You could have left this mainland a long time ago and became a true legend. Yet you chose the toughest road. After 10,000 years, do you still love her? A soft sigh emitted from the Regicide Skyblade. However, Divine King Luo Shue did not say anything and responded with silence. Initially, she remained in this mainland because of you, but you did not accept her feelings, and persuaded her to leave. It seems that you already knew the awful nature of those people. It's just a pity that she was unwilling to leave, until when her temple was destroyed and faith was tarnished. You appeared and disguised yourself as those people to split her flesh. You brought her heart away and stored it in your body, bearing her curse of anger, but this ruined your entire life. Was this really worth it? The Regicide Skyblade said. Chapter 1084 Divine King Luo Shue. 2. You're unwilling to admit that you are Divine King Luo Shue, as you're afraid of tainting that name. In these 10,000 years, you pretended to be a wicked person. But if you're really wicked, you could have destroyed this mainland a long time ago with your determination. I can already feel that your heart was bleeding when you killed one Falling Sky Valley disciple. You wish to leave with her heart. You think that by keeping her heart as a whole, there will always be a chance to revive her. However, 10,000 years have passed, and her soul has already disappeared. Are you still going to avoid this problem? Why are you not willing to face reality? The Regicide Skyblade's words knocked onto Divine King Luo Shue's heart, and his expression changed. Only the Regicide Skyblade that had been by Divine King Luo Shue's side knew what exactly happened 10,000 years ago. No one knew the weight of this issue. Yet, 10,000 years have passed, Divine King Luo Shue mumbled. You're afraid that the dimension wall breaks? You're even more afraid that the powerful figures from the outside world will come to this mainland and take her spiritual abode away. Once that happens, your curse will never be removed, you cannot leave with her heart, and she will not have any chance to revive. Ultimately, you're just deceiving yourself and others. Even if you can leave this mainland, she is still unable to be revived. Old friend, wake up, Regicide Skyblade sighed. For that overly compassionate extraordinary lady, the once unique and unrivaled Divine King Luo Shue was now, boom. Suddenly, blood-colored streaks of lightning appeared once again. Bolts of lightning filled the sky aggressively. This heavenly tribulation array formation is laid by those people, and its might is no weaker than a real heavenly tribulation. As long as you intend to leave, the array formation will be activated until you're completely dead. Old friend, I am with you, said the Regicide Skyblade. Ha, great. Old friend, what do I have to fear with you here? Divine King Luo Shue laughed aloud, still jovial even when facing the terrifying force of the heavenly tribulation. Boom, 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 boom. In the next second, several thick bolts of lightning struck down at Divine King Luo Shue. With the Regicide Skyblade in hand, Divine King Luo Shue stood in the air silently in superiority, but his figure was extremely lonely. 10,000 years ago, he had an excellent reputation. Now, all that was known was his infamy. 10,000 years ago, who did not recognize Divine King Luo Shue? 10,000 years later, who knew about Divine King Luo Shue? Divine King Luo Shue, who was forgotten and abandoned by everyone, wielded the regicide sky blade once again and fought against the heavens. Swoosh! A black sword glint opposed the blood-red bolts of lightning directly. Boom! The sword glint broke after being unable to block the heavenly might. Divine King was heavily injured and fell from the sky. However, he never landed on the ground. With a laugh, he charged upward to the sky once again and received the blow. At this instant, Yi Qingtang was shaken as she looked at the figure that remained still almost eternally. She heard everything that the regicide Skyblade had said just now. The truth that no one knew of shocked her. She originally thought that he was like those others from 10,000 years ago, who turned their backs on that extraordinary lady to gain more power. Yet, unexpectedly, what kind of person was Divine King Luo Shui? And what was his relationship with the extraordinary lady? Chapter 1085 Divine King Luo Shui, 3. Why did he rather bear the endless infamy and tell the world about all his evil deeds, tearing down the palace and destroying the faith when all he wanted was to protect the extraordinary lattice heart? An originally compassionate man eventually did not hesitate to slaughter living beings and wanted to leave this mainland with that extraordinary lattice heart. The force of the heavenly might was increasingly frightening, making it seem as though all the gods personally brought the calamities to the people. The scary array formation force from 10,000 years ago was still extremely terrifying when appearing now. What was sealed in the array formation was the true force of the heavenly tribulation and the fury of the heavenly might. Bolts and bolts of blood-colored lightning were destroyed by Divine King Luo Shui, and even more heavenly might exploded on Divine King Luo Shui's body. Currently, Divine King Luo Shui's body was already covered by fresh blood, but the heroic and heart-wrenching laughter echoed continuously. However, at this very instant, a few gold carriages appeared in the sky not far away. Several huge demons pulled the gold carriages and circled around the sky. Divine King Luo Shui indeed wishes to leave this mainland to revive that woman. If that woman is revived, wouldn't we definitely die? A deep voice sounded from one of the gold carriages. It's fortunate that we foresaw this and hid an ancient array formation on Divine King Luo Shui's body. Once he wishes to obtain the spiritual abode and leave this mainland, the ancient array formation will be activated, and he will definitely die. Yi Qingtang's eyes were on those gold carriages right now. Once she saw the symbol on those gold carriages, she was slightly taken aback. The hidden ancient clan? The historical records of this mainland once documented that somewhere between the clouds and mountains, there existed a hidden ancient clan that was shut away from the world, and its symbol was exactly the same as the one won the gold carriage. There were plenty of rumors regarding those ancient clans in this world, but in her previous life, Yi Qingtang had never seen a single hidden ancient clan even when she left this mainland. She originally thought that the existence of the hidden ancient clan was merely a random record and not the truth, or that perhaps those ancient clans had already long passed away over time. Thus, Yi Qingtang used the name of the hidden ancient clan to deceive Peerless School and the few peak masters of Falling Sky Valley. But it turned out that the hidden ancient clan actually existed in this mainland. Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes at those gold carriages. She did not know why the hidden ancient clans suddenly appeared and came here. But for some reason, Yi Qingtang faintly sensed that the appearance of these hidden ancient clans was perhaps related to Divine King Luo Shui. Boom! The blood-colored lightning rained down non-stop, and the force of the heavenly might was difficult to block. Divine King Luo Shui was eventually unable to block the frightening attack of the heavenly tribulation, and his body fell from the sky. Old Valley Master! Seeing that Divine King Luo Shui's body fell, Perfected Xianxin and the other Falling Sky Valley masses were sorrowful. Although no one knew what exactly happened to the Old Valley Master's body, most of them at the scene would already have died without him. The Old Valley Master once blocked many disasters and saved the lives of numerous Falling Sky Valley members. All of this was inexplicable. Divine King Luo Shui's consciousness was gradually blurred, and his tight grip on the regicide sky blade slowly loosened. The regicide sky blade sighed. "Old friend, dignified Divine King Luo Shui, is it the end today? Your dream is not yet fulfilled. Ending like this? Is it a pity?" Chapter 1086 Is it a pity? 1. Is it a pity? Divine King Luo Shui closed his eyes, but his lips tugged up slightly into a heart-wrenching smile. 10,000 years ago, between the clouds and mountains, the flowers were in full bloom. There were vibrant blooms, chirping of birds, natural wind, and fluffy clouds at the mountain ranges. A man in snow-white clothes with outstanding looks was walking. "You are Divine King Luo Shui? I am Yu Yun from the central mainland. I like you." It was as though that lady walked out from a painting. She was so beautiful that one could not bear to touch her. Divine King Luo Shui's heart raced as he looked at that alluring face. Many seasons later, the lady became a respected goddess of the people, and together with Divine King Luo Shui, they led the masses toward a brighter future. However, years later, the lattice divine powers were slowly bled dry. As the lattice divine powers were exhausted, the world was filled with abomination. The ancient people smashed the lattice statue, destroyed the temple, and tainted the faith with resentment. It was a dark era. "I want her heart." In the temple, Divine King Luo Shui wielded the regicide sky blade and killed the ancient people like a madman, making them pay with their lives. However, in the end, a few elite family clan powerful figures appeared and joined forces to suppress Divine King Luo Shui. "I want her heart. I want her heart." Ultimately, Divine King Luo Shui seemed to give in and became a puppet without emotions in front of the millions of powerful figures. After swallowing the lattice heart, he left the temple and disappeared for 10,000 years. Yun. Suddenly, Divine King Luo Shui opened his eyes, and a surge of white-colored divine power emerged in his eyes and rushed into the clouds. In Yi Qingtang's disbelief, an extraordinarily stunning lady appeared in the form of a virtual image. She stood beside Divine King Luo Shui protectively with an elegant smile on her face. Yun. Divine King Luo Shui used all his energy to touch the lady, but his palm passed through her body. It was mystifying. Yi Qingtang looked at that perfect lady, perplexed. At this moment, Yi Qingtang finally understood everything that the regicide Skyblade and Divine King Luo Shui were talking about. That lady should be the extraordinary lady from 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, she once adored Divine King Luo Shui and was willing to remain on this mainland for him. Divine King Luo Shui did not hesitate to bear the countless sins and conceal his identity for 10,000 years, just to leave this mainland with her heart and revive her once again. 10,000 years elapsed quickly. In these 10,000 years, Divine King Luo Shui clung onto that last trace of hope and lived with the company of loneliness. As for that extraordinary lady, even after she died, her obsession with her loved one was also hidden deep in her heart. When Divine King Luo Shui encountered a calamity today, the obsession transformed into the appearance of that extraordinary lady when she was alive and appeared here to protect the most important person in her life. As the lady waved her hand, the blood-colored lightning exploded and vanished without a trace. "I am Yu Yun, from Central Mainland. Divine King Luo Shui, I like you." The lady looked at Divine King Luo Shui as she continuously repeated the words she said when they first met. Yun. Divine King Luo Shui trembled. A strong man was, however, no longer able to bear the pain as he sobbed softly. The scene from 10,000 years ago seemed to replay once again. After the extraordinary lady died back then, Divine King Luo Shui brought her heart to a small tree, and no one knew the location of it. Once the little tree grew into a tall tree of a towering multitude, Divine King Luo Shui's jet-black hair had already turned white. He remained under the tree for 30 years. Without knowledge of what year it was. Chapter 1087. Is it a pity? 2. Ancient Clan. Yi Qingtang stared at the gold carriages that were being pulled by a few demons in the air, and her expression changed. She never expected that the historical records were actually real and not a hoax. No one knew how powerful the hidden ancient clan was, and the initial Blood Moon sect probably could not be compared to it. The development of the issue had way surpassed Yi Qingtang's expectations. All of this was a chain reaction after the dimension wall broke. Once the dimension wall broke, powerful figures from the outside world would come to snatch the spiritual abode. As such, Divine King Luo Shui made up his mind to destroy the world, and his determination activated the heavenly tribulation array formation that had been laid on him 10,000 years ago. Yi Qingtang guessed that the hidden ancient clan was probably from the same generation as Divine King Luo Shui and was closely related to Divine King Luo Shui and the extraordinary lady. The blood-colored lightning continued on, but the sky darkened. A small drizzle rained down in no time. The virtual image of the lady remained beside Divine King Luo Shui, and her face was as calm still water. 10,000 years later, it was as though it was their first meeting 10,000 years ago. Divine King Luo Shui stood up slowly and looked at the familiar yet foreign lady before him. After 10,000 years of longing, he could no longer hold himself back. Divine King Luo Shui stretched a hand out towards the lady. His fingers trembled as he desperately wanted to hold onto something. However, his 5 fingers passed through that lattice body. There was nothing other than air. Yun, Smith, have you forgotten? In the 9 Lives Palace under the Bodhi tree, you said that in this life, you will marry no one but me. There was a trace of anticipation in Divine King Luo Shui's eyes as though he was hoping for Yu Yun to react. Nonetheless, it was as if the lady did not hear anything as she merely guarded in front of Divine King Luo Shui to dispel the blood-colored streaks of lightning. He clearly remembered what happened 10,000 years ago. After Yu Yun died, Divine King Luo Shui came to a little tree with Yu Yun's heart. With that one sit, no one knew how many times the grass on the ground withered and the skies changed. Day after day, year after year, over the years, the little tree grew into a towering tree with fertile soil in the surroundings. That day, Divine King Luo Shui's black hair turned into snow white. It was also that day where he buried all his love under the soil. From then on, he changed his appearance and concealed his identity. There no longer was a Divine King Luo Shui in the world anymore. Now, 10,000 years later, Divine King Luo Shui finally met Yu Yun once again. That lady who dared to love and hate and always told him that she would not marry anyone else but him. That lady who exhausted all his divine power and scattered her love all over this mainland. That lady whose temple was destroyed and flesh was distributed out to be eaten, who left the world with intense resentment. In these 10,000 years, he tried his best to forget himself and Yu Yun and almost went insane. At this moment, 10,000 years of hard work was so fragile. Even for a lady who died from misery, her obsession at the very last moment was still Divine King Luo Shui. 10,000 years ago, Divine King Luo Shui faced a huge calamity, and Yu Yun's obsession appeared once again. You can't hear my voice. You can't hear my voice. As Divine King Luo Shui looked at Yu Yun, it was as though his heart was being ripped apart. Luo Shui was already old, but Yu Yun was still like back then. Her face had never changed. It was so familiar and so foreign. Chapter 1088. Is it a pity? 3. Divine King Luo Shui called out to Yu Yun, but that lady who had been imprinted in his heart for 10,000 years did not respond. She was so near yet so far. Ha! Divine King Luo Shui. I already thought that you were harboring evil designs back then. In the end, you really betrayed us. You deserve it. Just when Divine King Luo Shui fixed his gaze on Yu Yun, several elderlies walked out of the gold carriage and floated in the air. Divine King Luo Shui looked in the direction of the voice and saw those ancient clan powerful figures. His face turned extremely cold in an instant, and overpowering martial willpower rushed into the horizon. Ha! If you swallowed that dumb woman's heart from the start, you could have been free from the curse, went to the outside world, and still be that Divine King Luo Shui. Yet look at you now. What are you? A white-haired elderly stared at Divine King Luo Shui and scoffed. This elderly similarly possessed the power to contend against the heavenly might. Yin-Yang 10th Heaven. Yi Qingtang sensed an enormous power around that elderly that was actually the same as that of Divine King Luo Shui. Yin-Yang 10th Heaven. Yin-Yang 10th Heaven, which had disappeared from this world for a long time, actually appeared in 2 people today. Could it be that, in the era 10,000 years ago, these martial realms are not as simple as Yin-Yang perfected Lord Realm? Yi Qingtang frowned slightly as a perplexed expression emerged in her eyes. No matter the ancient clan powerful figures or Divine King Luo Shui, although they had the power of a Yin-Yang 10th Heaven, their martial aura was no weaker than hers when she was a holy venerate back then. It was also to say that the martial skills of these people were definitely not as simple as Yin-Yang perfected Lord Realm. In reality, just as Yi Qingtang had guessed, Divine King Luo Shui was unparalleled 10,000 years ago and might defeat even an emperor-level cultivator 10,000 years later. He was known as a magnificent man who was just a small step away from a true god. 10,000 years ago, those powerful family clans were almost at the emperor level. 10,000 years ago, an emperor-level figure was nothing much, as that was a generation where the divine king was highly respected. There were traces of divinity everywhere, and the brilliance scattered by true gods could be easily spotted. Powerful figures only had one goal: to become a true god. This lasted until the extraordinary lady arrived, made this entire mainland, and led the masses towards an even brighter martial route and the realm of a true god. However, as the extraordinary lattice divine powers were drained, everything calmed down. The masses could not see any hope of becoming a god and thus vented all their anger on the extraordinary lady and shared her flesh to be consumed. After the extraordinary lady died, her indignation turned into a curse. She cursed the ancient clan of this mainland to never attain liberation and to be unable to leave this mainland forever, and she dispersed all the spirit energy away from this mainland. Without the support of spirit energy, the ancient clan members, who were once neck and neck with emperor-level figures, were as good as having lost all their cultivation base and could only be stuck at the Yin-Yang perfected Lord Realm forever. This was also the same for Divine King Luo Shui. However, those hidden ancient clan members did not know how to break the extraordinary lattice curse, though they were still the most powerful people of this mainland when they remained. They did not allow any member of the ancient clan to leave, especially Divine King Luo Shui. If Divine King Luo Shui left this mainland and restored the power of a divine king, everlasting perdition would greet them. Divine King Luo Shui, you are heavily injured by the heavenly tribulation today, and you will die here.